welcome Justin Monroe, director of the documentary Holy Frit.
What's going on, man?
Cheers.
Cheers. I was wondering when we were going to get to drink these.
There you go.
There you go. Hey, this kind of matches our beard. Or at least yours. Used to match mine.
Now you got some still in there. So we're gonna intro your film here because for many people this might be the first exposure to it. Holy Frit. In this visceral 3-year race against time, Tim Carey, a talented yet unknown LA artist, bluffs his way into winning the commission to create the largest stained glass window of its kind. The problem is, he doesn't know how to make it. After a desperate search, he finds someone who might have the answer. A world-famous maestro named Narcissus Quagliata.
Yeah.
A world-famous maestro named Narcissus Quagliata. There we go. As the fates of the three communities hang in balance, Narcissus arrives like a storm and everything changes.
There you go.
So let's just start with a true and false about this project.
All right.
Holy Frit had its world premiere at the 2021 Slamdance Film Festival, where it won the Audience Award for Best Documentary Feature. True or false?
True.
True. It won a total of 10 festival awards.
That's right.
Wow. The film qualified for Academy Award consideration.
That's right.
Wow. Currently, Holy Frit has a 100% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
I haven't checked in like a couple of days, but I think so.
Mostly true.
I think it's true.
Mostly
I think it's true.
Got
Yeah,
it.
we'll say true.
Yeah, we'll check Snopes on that.
Yeah.
It played in over 41 movie theaters across the U.S. and one in Canada.
That's right.
And it has several positive reviews from critics and audiences alike.
Yeah. I knew that we had something special in the story, but I also knew no one is going to want to watch a movie about stained glass. Like, who in the crap is going to want to watch this thing?
Well, I remember when my wife was watching your film, I was like, I'm going to sit down and watch it too. And I was like, this is going to be a challenge because it's a subject I know nothing about. And I'm like, is it going to be compelling? And it turned out being like, I was like, this is really cool because the fabrication methods and then like the challenges of trying to create something so big with like either undiscovered or lost or rediscovery of like techniques and engineering, because it's not just like it's not a glass window. It's got all these designs in it and all these different color textures that behave differently when it's being hit with light.
Yeah.
And so like I was like, I learned a lot more than I should have. That's the point. The point is I was like, this is really good, and I liked the fact that you were there. We'll get to those questions during production because that's fascinating, making a documentary and catching those moments where people are in the process of doing the story, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not following the story after the fact. You're there and meshed with their process.
Yeah, that was the only way I felt like this was going to work, because this could not be a talking heads looking back story, And to me, watching somebody change in real time, taking on the biggest thing in the world, and not knowing how to do it, and he's sort of like Tim is, I like to call him a jackass because he kind of was. Like, he made me laugh all the time, but he just had this Larry David way about him.
Nice.
And then you pair him with this maestro, Narcissus Quagliata, and he is his name.
Got it right.
He is his name, and I thought the only way to do this is to be embedded in the story, because you have to see these characters clash, and so to me that's why I knew that this story was right.
So like this is the concept. You're in the concept development of the product for the documentary. You're catching the story at its inception.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through that, like, regular films, they have scripts or books or personal experiences, and then they're sort of developing that from there. You're going from a cold lead and pursuing it. Were you developing the concept as you went, or did you have a specific structure when dealing with the subject?
Well, I knew, look, I just stumbled into it. Like, the reason why I know anything about this is I just happened to move next door to a guy named Tim Carey.
Right.
And so I hear about the project. He asked me to come down and film a promo before they even pitched the project. Well, they had whittled down a little bit, but he was like, look, we have to stand out among 60 companies from around the world. Come shoot a promo for us. He knew I was a filmmaker. We just got to know each other.
So you helped him win the bid then?
I guess so. Yeah. But I didn't even know. I just said, I'll come down. And then I walked into this world called Judson Studios and I went, whoa. And then I heard about the project.
Yeah.
And I went, holy crap, this is amazing. And so I said, you have to let me just start filming. So I didn't go into it with any idea other than all of these things working together are crazy.
Right.
And these characters are crazy. This is going to be interesting. Just let me film.
So coincidentally, in another universe, you were like with the losing contract that didn't get to make the window because you just moved into the next to that producer.
Right.
Yeah, like because like a story like this is interesting in terms of like concept development. Like I'm sure a lot of documentarians have this challenge of trying to embed themselves in an environment where things are taking place, and they come up with a dud. They miss, or the story's not as compelling as they thought, and so they're left with all their efforts sort of in a hard drive somewhere.
Right.
But for you managed to score this. So like this is a circumstance you turned into a documentary.
Yeah, and I knew all those things were possible. By the way. I'm like, I knew that I had to do it. It's just when like everything inside you says if you don't, you're missing something. But I knew all the time they might not land the thing. This guy Narcissus might not come along.
Right.
It could be a horrible design. All these things could fail, and then in the end, maybe it just sucks, man. Maybe it's boring.
Right.
And I don't know what it was. I just those things you follow and then you go, thank goodness.
Yeah.
It kind of worked out.
I can tell that like when you watch certain documentaries that sort of are, that the people making the documentary were not into the subject, and you can sort of tell that they were just making it. You're like, but this was one of those things when I was like, I sat down and I was skeptical, right? Because documentaries either hit or miss, and I was like, this guy likes the subject, and it's pretty obvious because the people you're interacting with or the things you're getting from them means that they were asked the right questions, and so like, because how do you get someone to talk about a subject that maybe they just take for granted and it's very complicated, trying to get a doctor to tell you stuff, they're usually like, yeah, you're fine.
Right.
And that's a compelling subject in itself, but a lot of doctors don't engage. Right.
Yeah.
And so he's this obviously talented person and he's like, yeah, thanks for asking. And then he's off to whatever he's doing. So that's how I knew like this is a good documentary because the subjects themselves are engaging with whatever you prompted them with.
Yeah, I just think I lucked out. I mean, it was good that I had gotten to know Tim, so we were friends, but just for a little bit. I got to know a person through the lens, which was so weird. But we had formed a relationship. He's fun. We had a good time together, and I guess that made him feel comfortable. And then I had this passion for what he was doing. He had a passion for what he was doing, and he was grateful that I was willing to be there and document it. We just had a full buy-in to the moment,
So was this your first documentary?
My first documentary. It's my third feature. I had two other narrative projects before, but it's my first doc,
So if you were to compare the processes between, just briefly, so that people can understand how you made possibly you made a leap from filmmaking to documentary.
Yeah. Well, it's, at the end, you still need all the things you need from any good movie. You need good characters, you need good stakes, you need tension, you need transcendence, you need those things that like make people want to buy into the story. And I knew that they were there. I'd hoped that I could do it justice, but I knew that they were there. But the difference between the approach is like the absolute flip. So, having made narratives, it takes so much time to write the script and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And you get it to a point, then you try to get the funding, right? You do all the fundraising you can and shake all the hands and do all the things and meet all the oil people and the doctor people and all that stuff. And you think, do you want to buy in on this thing that most likely is going to make you no money? You're probably going to lose everything. Because you're an independent filmmaker, right? So that is so hard and it takes so long. But once you get that, and you have your script, you have a blueprint. You know what you're going for. And your job as the director is to call those moments into being as if they were real, right? Create authenticity out of them. Well,
but I mean, the thing is though, as if they were real. Like in this case, it was real.
Well, that's right.
It was developing and it was ongoing. So like, I guess we'll get to the fundraising portion a little bit later. But I imagine you were doing this in sort of sections, like
Yeah, a little bit.
Right,
Yeah, I mean,
like with a feature, you want to be like everything's lined up,
Yeah.
and then you
yeah,
get
the
through it,
scheduling, you have to
know?
get all those things.
Yeah.
But with the doc, what I loved about it is I could just grab my camera and a
Right.
microphone and just start.
Right.
And the funding part, the complicated part, as long as they would let me be
Right.
there, came on the backside. So so all of the fundraising is when you have to get into the post production.
Right.
We had to get a few things.
So
I got some cameras.
would you say
but-
your concept development and probably fundraising was organic, and it just sort of went through its own like infinity loop instead of steps?
Yeah, I did have to ask for a little bit along the way. I put in,
Right.
like any filmmaker, you put in
Right.
your own money and you put credit cards and.
You try to remember. You're like, oh, am I
Yeah.
supposed to spend it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to get your wife convinced that she's okay with you spending the money on this thing. And, but yeah, you asked about did it go in waves? And the filming had to just be all the time.
Right.
I wanted to embed myself to get that kind of a story
Right.
you talked about, because you could film for 8 hours in a day, and then like the last 2 or 3 hours you're there, that's when the magic shows up.
Right.
But you don't know when the magic's going to be there. So I wanted to be there all the time.
So like you're sitting in the office and they're like doing accounting, and they're like, it's Q3, we're gonna, and you're like, and then someone,
right.
and you're like, oh, roll like on that. So
Yeah.
you had to be ready.
Yeah, and so a lot of times it's just be standing there. So the filmmaking was just watching the process from beginning to end whenever they were trying to get the job, win the job, and go through it. But the editing part took me about the same amount of time as the
Right.
filming. So 3.5 years filming, 3.5 years editing, and that's where like the chapters would come in.
Right.
Because I'd have to fundraise
You
to
have a
get
lot
to
of
a certain
offcuts.
point,
Yeah, yeah.
and then go away and watch what I did, and my editor would go take jobs, and then we'd come back. So we would do it in waves. Yeah.
And there was like many moments of re-entry, because you would go off and do something else, and you come back and like, right, they're assembling this, and
Yeah.
I needed that. Yeah.
And which I found to be really, I didn't want it to be that way,
Yeah.
because I'm used to like having all the funding. We're gonna do, 3 months of editing or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I wanted to just go, but the starting and stopping was really good for the story.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
was really good because I had to reflect on over a time, like, is this good what we just did?
Right.
And I also spent a lot of time transcribing all the interviews. I did every single transcription
kidding.
myself, and I had so much stupid footage.
Could you imagine doing that now with AI?
No,
You could just be
golly,
like,
that
done, and transcript,
Yeah.
done.
yeah, that came right at the end of my transcription.
Oh my God.
I think AI transcribed 3 of my interviews, and I went, "Where were you? Where
You're
were
like,
you?"
trying to get through it. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah. So I think that the starting and stopping frustrated me in the beginning, but then I actually went, "No, this is serving the project."
Right.
Because I can really think about where we're going next. I can really
Right.
think about what we have. Did I get everything we needed for this part?
Right.
Is it any good? So I'm grateful for the pauses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because then you're not anchored.
Right.
Like we're gonna finish this section and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And re-entry probably gave fresh eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that was helpful.
You've done this project over a 6-year period in which you've gone in and out of that project.
Yeah.
And how did you go through concept development? Like, is there a way you could describe that? Because I know depending on how I feel that day, I have a different take on
Yeah.
the archive.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about this versus like just a story that just could go anywhere.
Right.
I knew that this was going to have a beginning, middle, and end. They were going to get the design right. Once that was right, they were going to start building the beginning of the window,
Right.
all that stuff, and then they're going to build it up to a point, and then they were going to have to finish the window, then install the window, and then have the final hurrah.
Right,
So,
right.
what I didn't know was what all needed to go in between, right? So I knew that the structure, beginning, middle, and end, was going to take care of itself.
Right.
It was going to start when they started.
Right.
It was going to end when they ended, a little bit after. But
Right.
So that was helpful.
Right.
But then it was like, what is it about these characters? What is it about the struggle that matters, I think, to the story? And to me, I knew nothing about glass. What I bought into was the characters, these clash between
Right, okay.
the old master and the young master.
Right.
And what parts of the story was going to tell that effectively that hopefully would translate into everybody can universally understand taking on something that's much bigger than themselves.
Right, because it easily could have been a documentary of just people talking.
Right.
And then you're like, like 20 minutes in, everyone's like,
Yeah, right. No, it had to show the tension, the struggle, the clash between the characters, and you know, both sides of that. Like when they're good, when they're bad. Like I wanted to show them as humans,
right?
But humans in a cooker, man. You know, in like a time cooker
with a deadline. They also have a budget. The irony is probably that you guys were sharing the same pain. It's at many points because they've got to finish the project and you've got to finish yours.
Right.
You just finished the window already.
That's right.
Like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, I often felt, you know, on this side of the camera,
right,
what Tim was experiencing on that side of the camera, and I would be elated when he was elated, or when things went well, or when things went bad, but I could not show my emotion, and I'm a loud, like expressive person. So when fun things would happen, I didn't want to mess up the audio, so I'd have to like stymie my laughs stymie my frustrations, but back there, I'm sure my eyes were, you know, dancing around. But I was experiencing every nail-biting moment with them, and frustration and elation and myself stressed the F out. Because I didn't know, was I going to be able to finish this thing?
Yeah.
Was I going to make it?
Yeah.
And at the end, were they going to make it? Because did I just film for 3 years a steamy turd?
Right.
Right? It didn't fall apart. Like I didn't believe that, but I didn't know. I didn't know.
Yeah. One of the downsides of being embedded, you know, you've got a relationship the audience does not have. Yeah. And you're going to attach to things that they
right.
Like,
right. Are they going to
How do I know that they're going to get what I'm getting?
That's right.
So that sort of leads me to like I guess we'll call it script writing.
Yeah.
In this case, you're probably doing a lot of script writing. Yeah. In the moment and in post. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. I'm going through the movie. A film, everything's done beforehand. Right. And it's decided before. Yeah. So this is organically developing in real time. That's right. And you know, just like with the narrative, even though you have a script, you have your shot list, you have all the things, but if you come in there and you're adhered to the plan, and you can't let go of your plan to respond to the moment that is speaking something new, you want to follow the authenticity, the magic, you know, I mean, that's what I like to call it. And because the movie will show up if you can create the conditions and be willing to, if you need to alter from your plan to follow that thing, it'll start telling you. But yeah, so along the way, you think you know where it's going. You know you've got a beginning, middle, and end of the story, but something would occur, and I'm like, okay, I have to chase that. Right. Or tomorrow, I want to find out where that goes, and that I didn't know it till right now. Right. So I had an idea of where I wanted to go all the time, and the subjective flow of like something new came up. I've got to chase that. Did you ever have any false leads? All the time. Okay. Yeah. So like, what would tell you at some point you're like, this is not the story? You know, you would. I mean, well, beyond the fact that I shot so much footage that's insane. There's cutting room floor stuff that. Right. I mean, so much stuff that was great, but like following characters that you thought were going to be significant to the show, and then realizing they actually left. They actually quit. Right. Or someone who you thought was going to be entwined in the thing, they just didn't cut the mustard. You know, anything. Right. Like that. So it's. Or there's bad circumstances. You're like, I don't think that should be in the movie. Oh, all the time. Right. Yeah. Even though I cared about it, I had to kill my darlings all the time. Right. But then just in the moment, chasing things and going, oh, this is not going where I thought it was going to go. And then you're like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. Right. Yeah. So that happens for sure. This is a process question about pursuing overlapping stories and timelines. Yeah. How did you keep track of objectives? Like there's their objectives and what they've got to do, and then how are you selecting from that pool of stuff that's going on? That because you can't be everywhere. Right. So you got. I tried really hard. You've got to pick. So you know, this is like reporter kind of question, right? Yeah. Like you've got to go. That's the story. Yeah. That's later, or you could ask yourself like, I can always get that. This is happening right now.
Yep, that happened all the time.
Yeah.
You're making choices, right?
Right.
But I think, so you're saying, like, if you're following all these narratives and these plot lines and these character developments, when do you know to go back and make sure you're closing loops?
Like, obviously there's
Yeah.
some intuitive decision architecture, but there's also like planning where you're like, I have a ton of media stuff in this bin about this story, and I need to get to the end of that. And this guy's talking about it right now while they're putting the window in.
That's right.
You're like,
Oh, my goodness,
okay,
man.
so like, you know, how did you put that in a hierarchy of like?
Man, you know, it's funny, in all of the Q&As and things we've done,
Yeah.
like I haven't had that question asked of me, and so you're causing me to go back into those feelings and like hoping. I mean, I remember I was stressing out in some of those moments because, especially with two very important things are happening,
Right.
and you have to make a gut call of, I think the power of this moment is showing up more than that, and I think I might be able to get that again if I just wait. That'll probably come back up. But sometimes it was like, I would set a camera up in one location.
There you go, yeah.
Put a microphone on the person, let them start going,
Yeah.
go over here, film this person, and hope that the camera and the audio was getting what I needed over there. And then I would have to go find it, right? I'd have to go find it. And so that's again,
that's the other one.
Well, that's
You're like,
again
you're
why
like, what was I looking for? And then you're scrubbing foot.
those spaces. That's what allowed, because when I would go back, I would transcribe during those times that we were off. So I would go back and look at the stuff that I hadn't seen, where the camera's over there, and I would go, son of a bitch, he said the thing.
Right.
When two important things were happening, I chose this one, but he said that over there. Other times you knew what was the right one in the moment. You know, you kind of got a gut. But when we went to one of the places we went was Bullseye the first time, I didn't know what to shoot because I had never been in that environment ever.
Yeah.
And so many things were happening, and Tim was learning for the first time ever. And the guys that were helping us, he was a mad scientist guy. I loved him. Tim's over here, Narcissus over there, all doing different things. And I'm like, I don't know how. I have no idea where to be right now. They're all in different rooms. So I would run, grab this camera, stick it there, grab this camera, stick it there, make sure this audio is there, and go back and forth between the two.
You grab someone's elbow and you're like, just have that conversation here.
Oh, totally. All the time. And sometimes I tried not to do this, but if something important happened and I fucked up the shot or whatever, I'd say,
can you?
And I had to ask all the time. I would say, listen, I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm here to tell your story. And I want to show off what this is and why it's so meaningful. I want to tell you in the right light. So just know that every once in a while, I might have you repeat things. So if someone said something and I missed it, I'd say, look, would you please just say that again?
Yeah.
You know, I'd have to do that.
Yeah.
I try not to do it much, but I'd have to do it.
So you're, aside from that kind of intervention, this story, the way you've got it cut together, is the most honest version that could possibly, because I've worked for other production companies where they're shooting a show that's about something and the producers step in and go, hey, you guys should disagree here.
Oh.
And they do that sort of thing and you're like, you know, like,
Yeah.
and they're both experts in the subject and they're like, we don't disagree.
Right.
We don't. This is
Right.
like how it is.
Right.
They're like, everything's going great. Why are you going like?
Yeah.
The producers need tension somehow, and they introduce. So like, did you have to do any of it? You just let it go.
No, man. And that's why I didn't need a villain. I didn't need, conflict. The window and these two characters, how different they were. And then you had Robert and these people that had all the commentary that was just adding fun. David, the boss. They were all going to be challenged by the immensity of the project.
Yeah.
And the fact that they didn't know what the F they were doing exactly.
Yeah.
They had no roadmap. I knew that was going to take care of the conflict.
Right.
So, as you could imagine, like the conflict showed up right on cue, man.
Nice.
Right on cue. And the only times that I didn't know what was going to happen, but someone was telling me, you should show up for this. Narcissus would call me. He called me a couple of times and he said, I'm going to have a talk with Tim today.
Right.
And I'm gonna lay into him. And because something he said yesterday, I just want you to know, get there early and have your camera set up. But so I had an awareness like twice or three times that a moment like that was coming, and I didn't know where it was going to go. And he said, just so you know, I'm letting you know.
So you had to almost set traps. You have to set like recording traps. So you capture the moment, so it's organic. You know, it's like if I was to think of like maybe how Nat Geo does stuff, they know
Sure.
this is where they go to drink water. They
Yes.
set it all up, and then they go. Hopefully,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's similar to that. When the subject was coming to the head, and you were like, okay, this today. I think most of the time you're
Right.
like, I've been here 4 to 5 days on this one thing.
Yeah.
And I can feel their tension, and they're not going to sleep because they're up till 3 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
I bet you tomorrow shit's going to break, and meaning them.
Right.
I'm going to be here early, and I'm just going to just sit back, and hopefully they're going to forget that I even exist and just show up. And that's the power of being embedded. And I knew this was going to be the stupidest thing ever because I was going to show up 5 days a week if I could. And be there for 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day,
Yeah.
depending on what was going on. Just hoping for like 20 minutes of like, wow, a movie just showed up, a story came alive, you know. That was it.
So how do you reconcile like the personal aspects of the story? Because obviously, I think that's the heart of it. Like how these people handle this problem, to the macro of like an audience that doesn't know anything about the subject and why they should care.
Right.
So like, how did you, in a script writing way or editing way, capturing way, understand that you had to make sure that a fresh pair of eyes would be with them?
Yeah. You had to establish certain knowledge, you know, but not kill them with too much information. You had, because you were bringing people along, and if they didn't understand just the base level of information, then they were going to get lost. And so you had to like make these moments where you stop and say, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what this is. Here's this thing we're talking about. We knew we had to do that, but that came in, you know, the editing. Like we knew, you know, given that we were, myself and my editor, who I worked with for 20 something years, working on narratives and commercial stuff and short films and everything, we had a shorthand, and, you know, we had spent a lot of time studying like the power of story and beats of stories. And so from a narrative perspective, we knew this is the moment where we have to like catch people up. Here's the moment where thinking about it like a 3-arc story.
I'd imagine you'd call like some of the explanation stuff like B-roll. You get all the dramatic parts, and then you'd be like, we need to go back to the lab and have the guy explain to us why colors show up in the glass a certain way. Like that way their argument makes sense when they're not getting along.
Totally. And the way you would do it is they would spend a whole day talking about some random thing, and I'm like, and that was good for me because I didn't know anything about glass.
Right.
I would be like, what are they talking about? So I knew I've got to get an interview with Tim tomorrow. Hey, tell me about yesterday. Let's talk about yesterday. Explain to me what you meant by that. And then he would tell me, and I'm like, there we go. Now we have all the connections we need to help people understand what they saw there. And then you put it together, right? Then it's about making selections of the best way to put that together efficiently and compellingly.
So this is like a non-scripted method, right? Like this is...
Yeah, I mean, there is no script. I mean, again, you're writing, you're understanding, but I am trying to check into what I understand about story and dynamics and information.
Yeah.
And I would write things down. I'd be on my phone and they'd be talking. I mean, that's the luxury of you know, doing a narrative. They're doing things. You're shooting. The audio's on. Everything's good. I'd get my phone out and I'd just start making notes.
Make notes, yeah.
Ask Tim this. Do this. Do that. Oh, crap. He followed up on that. Remember, that's the answer to the question he asked 2 weeks ago. Holy shit. He just discovered it, right? Like, you do that stuff. And then I'd bring those notes with me and transcription to the editor. And I'd say, all right, let's make a scene, and here's where we're going to get these pieces.
Would it get as specific as like, 11 minutes in, this whole subject is explained clearly?
You need to. Yeah, like, you have to. We I don't know what it is, who figured it out, a bunch of smart people a long time ago that make movies, and why Save the Cat works and all these stories, because there is a DNA to a story that we all resonate with, you know? And so there's just something that works and there's something that doesn't work. And when you're too long before you reveal the tension, when you're too long before you understand certain exposition, you get lost. So you know, by minute 11, I need to know these things. Right. You know, like by page 7, that's the inciting moment. Well, where is that in a documentary? And you have to get the backdrop the background where you need it to be, and then screw up the world, and then throw rocks at your subjects, and then let them succeed, and then all the things you do to make a great story. You have to ask yourself those questions by a minute marker in the movie.
Yeah. Because then you don't have to scrub that whole thing. You at least got like a bookmark on your coverage. Yeah. And you're close to the subject.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
You skip the coffee conversation. You're like, how's the weather? Done. Just read it 11 minutes. That's where the meat and potatoes is.
And you have to figure that out. Yeah.
So we've talked about how the story took shape, many of the different methods that you've managed to like pound a really good story out of something that's very compelling and then bringing it to people. But the process was ongoing for 3 years of production, 3 years of editing, correct?
3.5. Yeah.
So during that time period,
on both,
during that time period, you had to do other jobs.
Yeah.
You had, you have a life.
Yeah.
So how did you finance this? Because it's not like a production window for a film where you probably raise capital and You were going through this period of growing, spending.
Yeah, it was tough. Jeez, you're asking me to like.
Well, why don't you try? We'll try it from an order of events, because of course the narrative itself is organic, right? And you're kind of caught in the edit, and that's like another universe, right? That's not really based in time, reality, right? But like when you started, and you pursued this subject, you probably were like, it's probably only going to be 30,000, like. Your estimates in your head were something like it was going to take 2 years and it would be this much money.
Right.
So like, why don't we start at the beginning and then run through some of the hurdles and how it kept going?
Okay. So as I said, I found out about it just by accidentally moving next door to a guy who had accidentally invited me to come shoot a promo.
Right.
And as I'm there sitting there filming what I think is just a day worth of filming to make a fun little thing, I'm sitting there filming the promo and realizing, as my cells are just starting to electrify, holy shit, my life's about to change. And I was working on a narrative, raising money for it, talking to producers for it, starting to get casting directors involved, thinking, and it was like, this is my heart. I was going to do this movie.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, fuck. This is going to absolutely obliterate that whole thing. I have to put my time and effort into this. This is going to change everything in my life. Where did this come from?
Right.
So I'm sitting there as I'm filming a promo going, oh my gosh.
Bigger than this.
And then it's like 3.5 years, or however long it was going to be. I knew they knew it was going to be 3 years because when they started, they knew what their goal was. So I knew
right
that
there,
it was
you knew it was
3
a
years
big contract for 3 years, and that's after the so you shoot a promo. And you're like, I hope he gets the bid.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And then you're like, okay, at bare minimum 3. So there's already organic financing happening there. So the first thing you did for the promo was out of pocket?
No, the promo they hired me for.
Got it.
Judson Studios, the company that Tim worked for, the guy who made them, made the window, he was the head art director there. It's this old company, been around for 125 years. And that's what's so cool about them. But anyway, so the boss hired me.
Right.
David Judson hired me, and Tim said, "You should do this, David, so we can land this thing."
Right.
So that was paid for.
Right.
And they paid me nicely, and so yeah.
So you do this promo, they win the contract, and I'm guessing at some point you propose to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like when you're proposing to them, what did you do for that?
So I went back, and as I was sitting there doing interviews for the day for the promo,
right?
Because I filmed a number of people, but quick interviews,
right?
And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, this has to be filmed,
right?
I remember saying to David, that the guy who runs Judson, this needs to be filmed. And they're like, why? No one's going to care about this. And I said, I don't know. I know nothing about your world, and I'm telling you, something is here. Okay. So you have to let me. You have to let me film. I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about this. And so I think it was probably a few days later. And I called him up and I went down and I sat down across from the table and I said, just will you let me show up if you know, who knows if you're going to get it? Who knows if you're going to land the job?
Right.
But if you do land the job, you're going to want these moments right now.
Right.
Because no one gets these moments. These precede the like. This is where the story's going to start.
Right.
Do they get it?
Right.
And if they do, and then if they get the guy Narcissus and all these things, that would be amazing to capture now. And so I just sold it to David, and I said, listen, I'm going to come down on my own dime with my own cameras, and we're going to start doing this thing. So I paid for sound guys to come out. I paid for a few guys to come down and help me with some interviews out of my own pocket, and just to see, if we can get the bones and the beginnings of something. And then as it went on, I went, all right, I have to figure out how to keep getting sound and how to keep getting cameras. And that's when I went, I've got to raise some money.
Right.
And so I was able to raise just enough to get me a Zoom recorder, right, and a couple of microphones.
Right. So what was the method you used for raising capital?
Ask friends and family and friends of friends, and eventually, I got real investors. These are all steps along the way. But in the beginning, it was just myself and friends and family.
So, this is part of the conversation that a lot of filmmakers sort of skirt over.
Yeah.
Because the human capital portion of it, I just call it human capital because there's sweat capital, there's human capital, right? Yeah. And everyone's always talking about budget and money.
Yeah.
And of course, budget and money is super important, right? Yeah. But there's so many things on the below the line items that are like somebody volunteered or somebody, things that don't end up in the ledger because you had to make it work.
Yeah.
You might have hired a guy for that day and he didn't show up. So you had your Zoom recorder and you're trying to capture ambient sound. So the first part of it is you were paying out of pocket for people that could show up.
Yeah.
And then at some point you're like, I need to take on these positions because they won't always be here and I won't always have that money.
That's right.
So you've got human capital, sweat capital in keeping the project alive. Yeah. And so if we were to sort of speculate about how much money that would be, because that's raising a budget, right? It didn't end up in the thing, but for sure, if you were to bill yourself that time.
So having had the experience of the other projects that I've done and worked on commercials, I had an understanding of how much things cost,
how many hours.
For me, I mean, there's also a point where you just say it's going to be whatever it is. But I'm putting myself there, right? So there were days where I would hire a crew on big days. We wanted to get the crane and the red cams and do really fancy lighting. But I knew the day-to-day, most of the time, it was going to be me, a camera, and some mics. Right. A couple of cameras and some mics. So I needed enough money to get those Zooms, the Zoom and the mics, and 2 cameras that I could rely on. And that was a certain amount of money. $15,000-$20,000 between all that stuff.
Adds up super fast.
But I knew that would keep us going no matter what. Right. And I had done enough filming over the different things myself. I'd done enough audio, so I knew in a pinch, I could do it. Right. I couldn't do the really high-profile stuff, and that's when I would have to sort of budget for those things. Right. This thing's coming, and I'd have to go raise more extra money for that, or spend more money on the credit card for that. I really managed to just get my way through production, the filming, fairly easy, not easy, but I knew that it's because it's a little here, it's a little there, and it was mostly me funding myself.
So mostly your personal finances, your personal time, but occasionally you were doing financing through professional connections, people that could. And how would you remit the balance back to them in some way?
So it was. I have just
a favor.
I have just a few investors. So there's one guy who actually worked at Judson. Okay. They brought him on right whenever I got there, and this was crazy. They were putting a new position in place. He was going to be their social media guy.
And this is what year again?
This is 2014.
2014. So they're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So I was. I'd filmed a little bit. This guy started, I would say, a few months into the shoot, and he was great, and he was young, and he was willing to let me sort of help, mold the direction. Right. But he did have talent. He had good instincts, and the way that worked is I worked out a deal with David to let David have equity in the project for loaning me his guy who only had about half of a job to do.
Right.
And I also said, listen, we're going to use a lot of these videos and these interviews that we get to make little promos for your company anyway.
Yeah.
And so if you'll do this, we'll barter on the fact that I'll do those for free for you. So if you know.
So what would you call that in terms of a method?
I mean, geez,
Is
because
that like
there is a dollar and cents. Like we had to
Right.
figure out what is this guy worth per hour? How many hours am I using him per week? That calculates to X number of dollars per week.
Right.
So I would say, well, what does that translate to into equity in the project? Well, I had to think, well, how much is this going to cost me?
Right.
How much is this going to? Sorry, I saw no, it's not plugged in. Sorry. How much? I had to think to myself, how much do I think this film is going to cost me after 3.5 years of filming?
Right.
And I'm going to try these big moments where I bring a lot of people in, but mostly me.
Right.
I figured out that number,
Right.
and then I went, okay, I think the film is going to be $400,000. Okay, that's what I thought. It was going to be $400,000.
So you calculate.
So I calculate
points on the back.
Yeah,
end.
I calculate what is 1 point worth in a $400,000 film.
Right.
And then you set, all right, Kyle. This guy's name's Kyle.
Right.
Kyle Mixon. How many hours did he work this week? What's his day? What's his not
Right.
day rate, but hourly rate?
Right.
Okay, that means he costs X number of dollars per day. Over how many days? That
Yes.
equals this much equity.
Right.
David, over this many months or years or whatever, right? So I had to calculate that all along. We would have to have a conversation about it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that's a different way of funding your project. You're sort of like commensurate with the company that you're working for.
Yeah.
Because you're working for yourself, but you're working
Yeah.
for them.
I mean,
they're
I'm
getting
not
some
the-
benefit from the media content,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So like, what would you call it? Like a loose partnership? Like what
Yeah,
is
it was a loose partnership, but from the beginning I said, you don't get to have a say in the creative.
Right.
And we have to establish that because
But did they have access to media?
but I said, but I will edit things for you that have nothing to do with the movie, but they're adjacent to
There
the
we go.
subjects,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I will do these things, which will be my payment back to you, and which means we're going to shave off what I've just borrowed from you from Kyle, right? And we'd work that out, and at the end of it, where's the ledger? You know,
Right.
where does it sit? That I did this many things for you. Kyle worked this much time for
Right.
me. Where are we at? This much is surplus towards you. It's equal to X number of percentage points in the movie. Are you okay with that? You okay with that? Great.
So just to tie this all back together, then, when you get through each year of production and then each year of post-production, doing this sort of partnership, are you going to resolve all of that sort of difference, all of that running sort of meta ledger in your head at the end, or were you keeping track of it throughout?
I was definitely keeping track of it
Okay.
throughout. And by the way, I forgot to mention, David would have to send, the installers or Tim or different people to Bullseye,
Right.
make all these trips to Kansas City back.
Right.
Well, I would say, hey, would you pay for the plane tickets?
Right.
Would you pay for my hotel room? I'll pay for my food. Well, that was another number,
Right.
right? So that went into his little bucket.
So like this is super important for filmmakers that will be watching this, because there's so many different ways to make deals with
right.
people, right?
That's right.
And many people seem to think that they have to do it a certain way, and this is like such a unique way of making sure you had access to your subject and getting your project finished, but it was with a partnership, loose partnership with somebody.
Yeah.
And then how did you was it contract? There was a contract hammered
Absolutely.
out?
Yeah,
Got it.
Yeah, I worked out a contract, and it was a pretty thorough contract
Right.
about you're going to have like a line of credit, so to speak, right?
Right.
And we're going to check in
Like
every
a
month
retainer.
or whatever. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I'm going to say, every time you need to send someone to Kansas City, throw me on there. Let's try to get the best deal we can
Right.
on car rentals and hotel rooms or whatever. Let's not break the bank here. But just, you're going to agree that you're going to send me every single time. David, because he's sending out his other people. So I'm just one more guy that he's paying for paying a plane ticket for. So I'm saying you're going to guarantee that
Right.
those things. I'll guarantee my own food. But I've done other films like that where
Right.
where you work out other people. When you're fundraising for a narrative, you're going to all these people up front. You're saying
Right.
the film is $500,000, $1 million. You're going to buy 10% of that. That's this much money.
Right.
And you know it going in. This one, we didn't know how much it would be worth, but I had to project. I think it's probably going to be about $400,000, and that was a guess. I would guess from talking to a lot of people over
Yeah.
time who've done documentaries.
Yeah.
what I think, it might cost me my hard cost.
Yeah.
But I was just projecting like what I think. And then I started bartering and coming up with, just coming up with ways to get that money that weren't someone just handing me money,
Right.
But it mattered. It mattered. It was money paid and money earned.
I mean,
in equity.
At some point, we should just do a whole thing about this, because this is like, there's so many cost barriers to people trying to make similar projects like this, right? And they get disheartened and lost because they don't know how to report these things. They don't know how to make a contract that's fair. They can burn them, because you've managed to get through this without burnout, without financial bankruptcy, and you didn't default on your obligations to finish the product. There's so many things that happen here that, outside of just making an awesome documentary, that you managed to finish the project. And a lot of people get lost. 6 years is a huge amount of time that people can easily have swiped the card the whole time, and they're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, listen, man. Thank goodness, thank God, whatever you want to thank.
Right.
There are so many fortunate things that occurred on this film, but I have to tell you, you've heard this thing in theater or whatever. Somehow it just works out.
Right.
When your DNA, the hackles are happening in your body, something about the magic at the moment, and you follow that thing. And I'm so stupid. It's such a bad business plan to respond to that. But sometimes the information that you have all of it together and good sense tells you this is worth rolling the dice on.
Right.
And I don't know how it worked out.
Right.
Because I was having to make decisions in the moment. Oh my gosh, a new trip has to happen.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting to have to shoot this thing, whatever. So you'd have to go, how am I going to solve this? Could I give someone equity who comes in and works for the day?
Right.
And how much equity do I have to give away? And
what's fair?
Right,
Yeah.
what's fair? And that's the thing too, having been on so many, films where I got paid nothing and ones where I got treated like shit, and things where the film never happened, it never came out. It was like, I have to complete this for other people. I have to complete this for the people who invested this thing and saw this thing. I can't not. But I also have to honor their work.
Right.
Because I knew, so many times I wasn't honored.
Right.
So I have to pay people something that they feel like, this is fair. Those are things that meant a lot to me.
I imagine you've got a red folder for this thing, and it's just full of favors and IOUs and whatever. Because again, it's how do you get 6 years? That's huge. That's a massive amount of time.
Yeah, it's a lot. And by the way, I'm not at all trying to, but it was actually 7 years. It's been
God.
7 years.
Still, I mean,
because when you're paying for stuff, that extra year matters. It's.
I mean, even in real estate, people who invest in real estate at least have an 18-month pay guarantee, right?
Right.
You're well past that, and you're probably paying interest on it.
I wanted to take care of the things that were immediate. So when a crew would have to come for the day, we had different people filming. We'd bring the cranes in and stuff, and the big cinematographers. They needed to be dealt with that day. So I didn't try to barter that thing,
for sure.
Which means I needed to get the money from somewhere else, myself and others.
I imagine the big project days were a little bit more familiar.
Yeah,
because you could generate a production sheet.
Yep.
You could probably have a bunch of line items on there and knew exactly what that was.
Yep.
But the ongoing and continuous production, that's the part that baffles me, because I've also been burned in the film industry by making obligations or failing to remember somebody was there, because it's such a long distance of time, right?
Yeah.
The bigger days were actually, ironically, in some ways, more specific and easier to organize.
You're right. Yeah.
But the ongoing ones, I can't imagine. You could teach a course on just this whole thing, this part here that's sort of amorphous and hard to define, because this is where people get broken, I think. They do a big, ambitious project that takes longer than a year, and they auger themselves into a hole. This is a master's thesis. This is something that you need to do at a university for kids going into this trade, because so many of them have, high ambitions, and that's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that when you get through a large project and it keeps going, you can't remember some of the deals you made. You can't remember Like you giving someone equity, let's say 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
That has to be tracked for. You
Yeah.
don't want to over leverage your equity
Yeah, that's
position
right.
because you've blown through another year and you don't have it. Like this is where it gets really dicey. The longer a project is going,
Yeah.
and you've cut up the pie and you've run up the card.
Yeah.
And so when you're keeping track of all of this, how did you write it down? Did you have it sorted in your head? Like what did you do to track that? Because this is financing and this is also managerial accounting, right? Inside the business you're doing things before your investment matures and it goes off the market.
Yeah.
So
Man.
how did you do that?
Man, first of all, what a question. What a question. And
Sorry.
man, I would have wanted someone to tell me these things a lot of years ago. So, good question. Really good question. I'm happy that we're in this right now. I haven't talked about this.
Yeah.
I don't think ever.
Right?
So bear with me. I'm going to fumble fuck my way through this
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I have never had to recount to anyone how this whole thing went down. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time giving you a backdrop, but I have done it before.
Right.
I have done it over years. For whatever reason, I grew up, my father was an attorney. And so I knew a little bit about how law worked. I knew a little bit about how contracts worked, although he was a defense attorney for criminals. But I would, over the years, like,
it's a business.
And so I learned a little bit of just like the ins and outs of legality. And I had projects that happened earlier in my career where we had to navigate my first contracts where someone optioned a script and things like that. And I was freaking out. But like you do, you learn things over the years, right? And so, and I had my father to go back to a few times, but I didn't want to. And by the way, my dad was an equity owner in this who gave legal advice. So I'm like, all right, how much are you worth? I'm going to pay you because I don't want you to. If you see this as a favor, I might not get your best work. Even though I was his son and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, what's the phrase? It's like goodwill is a non-renewable resource, and you don't know how much of it you have.
Exactly,
right?
And unfortunately, I've overdrawn on that in other projects, right? And so
and even the person you're asking from doesn't know when their limit is.
That's right.
Until they hit their limit.
Absolutely right.
Like,
oh man, that's brilliant.
Right? Like, because
right.
they'd be like, "Yeah, man, I want to help you with your film," and immediately I get nervous when people are like, "No, man, I'll be there." I'm like, I don't know if I want you there because you're offering it for free. You're not even asking for money. This might be bad. Because at least if somebody says, this is my day rate, and this is good, and it's the only way, I might at least go, swipe, guilt-free.
Yeah.
But like,
that's exactly right.
Goodwill is very dangerous.
Yeah, it really, really is. And other people listening right now know what I'm talking about. We could spend forever on this.
For sure.
Subject.
But I mean, like, this is what breaks people, right?
Right. So I had learned the lesson of being the wrong end of deals gone wrong whenever I got screwed over and over and over. And knowing that as many favors as I had, asked over the years and knowing what you get from favors, some people just give you everything and other people are like, there is a point where they don't know, but they just say, done, right? And then you're left going, well, what the hell do I do now?
You're like, hey, bro, you want to hang out? Nope.
Yep.
Not done.
So having learned these lessons and navigated the awkwardnesses of all those things, if I can save you any time learning lessons from someone else who's been there so you don't have to run your head against a wall, I would like to do that.
Right.
Because I learned some lessons from people who told me and some lessons, a lot of lessons the hard way.
Right.
By being on the receiving end of bad deals myself, agreeing to something, because I do not want to not finish something. Like, I want my word to mean something. So if I say I'm going to do it, even if I'm getting screwed, I think there's something in the buying for the future with that person to honor, to complete the job. Yeah. So many people I have worked with have not done that.
Right. Or continue to operate that way.
And you're like, I can never be that.
Right.
I need to do the thing that I said. Even if I'm getting screwed and I know it, I'm going to bring myself to it because of how much I know it means. But if
you can always forgive yourself.
Totally.
You can't get someone else to forgive you.
But if you start thinking early
Right.
about the value of humans' time and ingenuity and talent and effort, and you say you're worth this,
Right.
how can I pay you? And you get an agreement. Getting agreements in writing, getting agreements. If you just do handshakes, that's one thing. And, you know, and I've done
That's
a lot
so
of those
dangerous.
things. But
Yeah.
what's that?
That's so dangerous.
It is.
So
It
even
is.
if it doesn't have any legal
It is.
consequences, it does. It's. You're
Listen.
like, what did I say?
Contracts
yeah.
are actually, because everyone thinks that we're all going to get along, and now hopefully you do. A lot of the times you do, but they're there for when things go poorly.
Yeah. Yep.
That's their job. Their job is
yeah.
to say, we love each other enough, we respect each other enough. Let's agree on what means something to us,
Right.
so that if we get to a space, we can say, what did we agree on? That's the standard. So it does the talking for you.
Right.
And
I've
that's
actually felt
what's really
safer
good.
with contracts.
Totally. It's,
you know, when
it's
people
totally
are like,
really good.
we don't need one. I'm like, no, we do.
Yeah.
We did, like, pull one off the internet, use
Yeah.
it. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
I don't want to get it wrong. Right.
So I realized the value of that. Everyone that worked
Yeah.
had a contract, for the most part. Maybe a few people didn't, but people that maybe came in for
Right.
a day or two or whatever. But I tried to, having learned the lesson many times before.
I imagine that helps later when you get off track and you like,
Right.
you can at least audit the
because
agreement.
you want to be able to look back, because when I'm assessing my equity, I'm assessing my budget, I'm assessing everything, what the movie is worth. How do I know that if I didn't write it down?
Right.
So I believe filmmaking is insane, man. I mean, it's only getting crazier.
For sure.
I don't know where this industry is going. And I'm screwed because I can't help but not do this shit.
Right.
Man, I'm like screwed because this is what I have to do with every bit of me. But it's not financially wise, but that's okay.
Well,
because
if anything, what this conversation proves regarding the dynamic, organic aspects of making a documentary that's happening, it's live.
Yeah.
You're not coming at it from the back end. You're in it.
Yeah.
Is that AI cannot replace you? There's no way. There's no way an artificial intelligence could react and do what you did, because you're able to think on your feet and then make deals with people while you're capturing the subject.
Yeah.
That's like, that's a lot of skill, and I imagine most of it was just like, and you're like in a rocket ship going over, you know, but the skills were there, right? Like when you describe your decision making, it's like, yeah, it was there. You just can't remember because it was made over that much time.
Yeah, I would say anyone who enters filmmaking, and I'm serious about this, I'm serious, you need to become a bit of a crazy person.
For sure.
You need to be obsessive because there are so many moving parts.
Right.
The business side, the human side,
Yeah.
the psychological side,
Yeah.
the day, like, are people eating?
Right.
Because people break down when they don't eat. Did everything get set up right? Making
Yeah.
sure the scheduling is right. The people show up on time. Did you get what you need? How do you barter for more time because everyone's tired, but we didn't get the thing? Did I show enough goodwill
Right.
earlier in the day to be able
Right.
to ask for 30 extra minutes? You have to be thinking about all these things. And if you're going to be a director,
And that never has to impede the subject. The subject
no,
has no idea what you're doing.
No, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But your job to
Yeah.
the subject is create the space for them to be authentic
Right,
and real
yeah.
and feel comfortable and alive.
Right.
They can't feel the tension that you're inside.
Right.
So I don't know how you do it without being a little bit obsessive and planning
Right.
a lot before and after and writing things down. And then
Yeah.
in the moment being willing to say, I know I calculated for this much money or this much
Right.
time, but this thing's speaking right now.
Right.
So fuck my plan.
Right.
But you have to like be on the fly. Well, what's that going to cost me? Can I get that tomorrow if I miss it today because I'm following this thing? If you don't stay in touch with all that, it'll overwhelm you. And especially when you're doing something for 3.5 fucking years.
So let's break it down
Yeah.
for people, because this is a financing and budget question,
Yeah.
right? And some of it's money and some of it's like spiritual, artistic, right?
Yeah.
So like you have a financing strategy, which is like running finance, which is probably, you know, seeking out other professionals for finance whenever you had to.
Yeah.
And then you have sort of an equity agreement with people that you possibly can't afford, which
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like attorney's fees, your dad,
Yep.
fair deal, right? Because
Yeah.
now he's invested in the outcome, so
Yep.
his advice has to be good.
That's right.
And so Then you have the goodwill aspects where people are volunteer. Volunteerism is good. Don't reject that. But certain people are actually genuine, and certain people are not.
Yeah.
And that's hard to know. So that's experience.
Yeah.
And then what would be our next element here? Just a ton of experience. You had a lot of experience going into this, so that you were not burning those resources on things that don't contribute to the project, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how you learn those things. Time. I mean,
time,
you have
experience.
to do it. You have to do it, which is why the sooner you can get on set, the sooner you can understand the dynamics, the sooner you can like finance a little thing.
Right.
You need to learn all these lessons, man. I mean,
so how many years had you been in the film industry prior to doing this documentary? Because that will inform.
So my education in how to be a guy trying to make a living in art was I was in a band, and we had 4 stinky guys in a van traveling up and down the country.
That'll do it, yeah.
And dealing with club owners.
Yep.
And are they going to pay you at the end of the night? They're not going to pay you. How do you get people there? The marketing,
Yeah,
going into the record stores, postering everywhere you can, hyping people up. You are all the things. To
Right.
all
your
the
sales,
people.
your
everything.
product.
You're everything.
whole
Then
thing.
you have to go. You do all the things that you just need to do just to do the thing you want to do.
Right.
If I want to be a director of something now,
Right.
I have to do a million things that I hate to do the thing that I wanted to do. And so that's the thing.
Right.
Depending on
Right.
how desperately, how badly, how dearly you believe in doing that thing will be the catalyst, the fire, the influencer, the inspiration to get through all the shit.
Well,
right?
you can see it. You can see it in large studio productions when they're divorced from the art in some
Right.
way.
Yeah.
Like we've won't say it here, but superhero films, where if the superhero films are literally just being produced as a financial item,
Yeah.
you can tell it's a financial item because it's somehow. I'm going to use the word castrated. It's castrated
That's a
from
good
its
word.
source, and it's now a manufactured product. So you can tell everyone in that part of that industry has figured out how to make money or how to make deductions,
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
But they don't know about the art or the subject, and because they have
Nor do they care.
Right.
Yeah.
So like what you're able to do with your experience is that you're able to take some of those aspects that allow you to finish products and deliver products with being the actual
Okay.
creator.
Okay.
Because I feel like large studios get caught up in you have the business types and they take over. And you do need business types, but you
Yeah.
need a certain kind of business type that
Yeah.
understands the product. It's like hiring a business type for a food company that never eats.
Right.
They don't eat.
That's
and they're
right.
like, we should make burgers. You're like, do you eat burgers? Nope.
Yeah. Right.
Obviously the burger's going to suffer,
Right. I think there are people as passionate about the accounting of burger making,
Yeah,
the accounting
yeah,
of burger making,
yeah.
as there are people who want to make the burgers.
Right.
You just have to find those people. I don't know how those people exist that are so geeked out about the numbers of burgers.
Right.
A patty. But they, for whatever reason, it just clicks for them. That is
Right.
the way they are wired.
But you don't want the person who's literally like, beef,
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah.
Like, you
yeah.
don't want
And
that
there's
person
something
eating a
right
burger.
because, listen, man. I mean, it's cliche, it's silly, but you gotta believe in something, man. You have to. Like, what are
Right.
we doing on this planet if you don't buy into something? You don't believe.
Well,
in
I mean, if you
something?
believe
And-
in making money and not products, you'll see.
Sure,
You'll
and-
see that sort of
right,
adverse
but
impact,
but
right?
if you don't understand
Right.
that the people are if you are like, I'm gonna make money, and you divorce the people from the money you make, you're missing the thing that's making you money.
Yeah, we
So
just need Q4 to work. Rest of the year,
no,
it's garbage.
no.
Who cares? Yeah,
The better off they're doing
Yeah.
and delivering for you, the better your money situation is.
Right.
You're never divorced of the human experience. You know?
Right.
So, it all boils down at the end of the day to a human exchange.
Right.
And are you taking capital away from that person? Are you
Right.
adding to them? And I think to some degree, you have to see it as an investment and your own investment, which is
Right. Yeah.
my kindness to somebody on set is serving my own interest.
Right.
not just for today,
Right.
but for tomorrow when I
Right.
need them, and for the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and beyond that, when the next project.
Yeah.
And beyond that, their work. If I serve them, if I'm kind to them, if I help them, if I encourage them, they're hopefully going to do their best.
Right.
Right. Which is the better business plan. It's the better business plan. So at all levels of finance, all levels of business, all levels of art, if you don't understand the human component, I just think you're missing all of it.
Right.
You know, I really do. So, I don't know.
It's super challenging to cover a subject that took so much time, because we have our subjects here for this interview laid out in a regular production format, right?
Yeah.
We just covered financing and budget, right? But when we get into crowdfunding and stuff like that, that's just an individual isolated element. But how would you crowdfund for a project that takes 7 years? Because at some point, someone who's part of the crowdfunding element is going to be mad. Like, where's my documentary? Where's my documentary?
That's right. Yeah.
And so many times we've seen crowdfunding things just fail. There's reasons for that.
Yeah.
But would crowdfunding be something you would have attempted at the beginning of this?
No, we talked about it. And I'm
Got
like,
it.
there's no way. That's one of the reasons why I love doing it, this documentary, because I knew what I was capable of.
Right. And
if I could bet on myself at the very end of the day, I know I can show up that day and just film, and I can get the job done decently, even though I knew that my idea was it was going to be a $400,000 film, but how long is it going to take to raise $400,000 through crowdfunding when the story's happening right now?
Or you might get to 10K and then everyone's like, I'm bored.
Yeah, right. And then, and are they going to be willing to wait the time you talked about? I know we're getting into the weeds of all this stuff, and I don't know if we need to do sort of like a simple narrative to get through here, because we could. But the thing is I think it all matters, and you young filmmakers out there, listen. This is a business of passion, and people, and you have equity in all of those things, emotional equity, sweat equity, all those things. And so, how are you investing in yourself? How am I investing in you? If you don't think about these things, you are going to ruin relationships, and you're going to have a shitty product. So, obsess over the details, because you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it if you want to be the person that shows the film to the crowd. You have to be as obsessive about the business part, obsessive about the scheduling part, the human dialogue part, the psychological part, as you are about the thing that you're there to do, or you're not going to be in that seat listening to a crowd of people cheer. It's just not going to fucking happen, man.
Well, it's like...
Or you're going to do it and you're going to have burned a lot of bridges, and they're not going to do it again for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the business is super, super important, because it's I think a lot of people set out to create art because it fills their soul, right?
Right.
And in some ways, if they make bad bargains, they'll feel very robbed.
Right.
So I know when I was younger, I made a lot of mistakes, overcommitted. And then, I'd be resentful of the person I overcommitted to, but I'm like, you know what? Some years later, I'm going, I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't have any standards regarding any of this. And I hadn't really sussed it out. It's up to me. It's up to me to make it work or not. It's up to me to really pay attention to what's going on. Because there's people who are good at production and they finish products and that's great. But there are also people that, aren't very good at it, and they continually run up the tab in any way they can. And then, everyone's just mad at the end of it.
You know what, man, it comes down to? You have to, at the very beginning, which is kind of a contract.
For sure.
You have to get really clear on what the expectations are.
Right.
And that is a lesson learned.
Right.
That's what I can say time has taught me. And so if I can teach you anything, expectations. If you can get a clear understanding between you and the other person, whether you have a contract or not, of, listen, it's going to be crazy today. We're going to go 12 hours a day. You sure you want to do this? Because all we're going to give you is pizza, and I'm going to push you I'm going to push you because I am so passionate about what this is.
Right.
This means everything to me. This isn't your thing. So
Right.
you're not going to have the same level. About hour 6, you're going to be tired and grumpy, and you're going to go, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep demanding it of you.
Right.
Are you okay
Right.
with that deal? And if they say yes, and then we get to hour 6, and the pizza was a little rubbery because we got to dinner a little later than what we wanted to, and then and they start getting squirrely, and you say, listen, I told you this was coming. Then it's on them. Because in that way, it is a contract. And it's like, people are still going to be people, and you can't help it. People get sick, people change their mind.
And everyone's got different capacities.
They have different capacity, but at least you can say, remember, I told you this was going to happen.
Right.
And you said, okay. So as long as we're both willing to acknowledge it, now say something different. Now you can say, you know what, I thought I had 12 hours in me. I actually have 2 more left. Okay, cool. Thank you for being honest. Communication, truly. Over communication,
right?
Because we fill in the gaps for a lot of people based on our situation.
Yeah.
If you don't over communicate, even though it can be annoying, I find it saves you a lot of headaches.
For sure.
Expectation and over communication really
Reason why communication, I would say.
Reason why, of course.
Sometimes like over communication is like, I did not need to know that. Yeah.
Well, right.
So just tell me yes or no.
Sure, I understand that. Yes, you can go off on your dog and like what happened, but what I mean is, you know, what is the thing that, you know, it's Sean or whatever, he'll say heard. Like when there's a chain of command or whatever, and you say something and they say heard, it's like, I know you know, we're all on the same page.
Right.
Man, that is helpful. That is helpful to know we're on the same page. So, no one's going to want to listen to this. This is like making a movie about a documentary. Sorry, this is about making a movie about stained glass. It's like, you know, we're on this. No one's going to listen to this financing bullshit. But it's so important.
It's so important.
It's so important.
Well, because the way you can separate the subject into is like the financing portion, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the managing portion.
Yeah.
You know, and I think those 2 books have to balance.
That's right.
Right. I have to raise and for you had to do both at the same time. You're raising either human capital or creative capital.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're spending it for all the people that are capturing it, right? And you're, you know, of course, tied into the art of not interceding on the subject. So like that's a very difficult set of skills because that makes sense. You being a musician and traveling around, a lot of that is run and gun, right? Because different venues have different problems, different technical issues, and you still need to go out there at 8 o'clock and then do the thing, right?
That's right.
And you could be stuck in traffic. You're like, Jesus Christ, you got to call the venue and they got to put someone on. Like all that shit's run and gun. But it's also accurate because if you're not good at it, they don't invite you. You don't get referrals. You don't, right? So that's a business where you're a salesperson. You're selling you're selling live, and then you know you got to make sure you don't blow the budget because you can't fly everywhere, right? You can't lose your instruments during transpo, all that stuff. So like basically, your job as a musician made you ideal for this documentary because it was a 7-year gig, really.
That's so funny, but that's right. That's right. It was. There's not any set or any project that I do anymore, show up to, where I don't look back on that time being in the band and go, thank you. And it was so fucking crazy when the club owner didn't want to give you the $40 that you had earned. Yeah. And you got a bunch of people like I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. And finally he was like, okay, go buy the guy some steaks. Okay. And you're like, oh, thank you very much, sir. You know, 250 people just came into your space and bought so much beer. Yeah. And yet you still like didn't want to part with your $40. Yeah. But my goodness, it was an education. Yeah. And how to keep going and to keep the passion alive. You're right. It was a 7-year gig. Right. Filmmaking is very much the same. The same kinds of things are going on. So I'm grateful to that. You know, and it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Yeah. But man, was it an education. You know, you had to keep track of equity. Yeah. Throughout, because of course you couldn't pay for everybody. Yeah. And you couldn't use goodwill all the time. Yeah. But this is a mixed budget. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So when you're brokering equity away for people, you had mentioned you save some for later. Yeah. And now that you're into the marketing and distribution
section of things. How much do you have left? Like if you were to put a percentage number on it, and then how much did you have to give away at each phase?
All right, again, I'm gonna fumble fuck my way through this
because
there's no way to experience just teaches you things, right? So I knew.
Tell me exactly what day over
Right.
the last 7 years. No,
Right.
it's one of those things.
I knew that I needed to keep at least 20% undefined
That's at the beginning.
at the beginning.
So 20%
20
was
to
part of your bargaining
25%
power.
was part of it. Yeah, I knew I needed to keep that. And then the way I figured that out is, if you have a $400,000 movie,
Right.
the way it works, and you probably know this, but I'm just going to be
Yeah,
stupid.
for sure.
Say the stupid things. Creative accounts for 50% of that because it's half of the thing.
Right.
So even though someone's financing the whole of a movie, they're buying half of the equity because you have to give all the actors and the directors and the producers what they get for giving their creative talent to the thing, right? And of course they get you can pay people and not give them equity, but usually it's a 50-50 thing.
Not like 51-49.
Well, that's when you're getting into like what a corporation is, right?
But I mean,
so
like,
usually it's LLC. So yeah, sorry, 51-49, but it comes out to be yes. So I knew that I needed
Right.
to maintain a controlling percentage because
Right.
I'm all in on this thing.
Right. So you beat the 51.
Yes. And then I knew that half of the movie would be financed, but I also knew that I was going to finance myself. So
For sure.
Which counts for that part of that 51 too.
But I mean, this is something most people don't know. They give away more equity, which means
Yes.
they lose some voting power.
That's right.
Over time, because
That's right.
that's another mistake you can make. You can give away too much of your equity, which means now you have to navigate politically within your own production company.
Yes.
To finish the project, so that
Yeah.
can happen. So 51.
So yeah, you want to keep controlling interest. There are ways around that
Right.
if you put them in the contract. So that's getting into LLC law and corporate law and all that stuff.
But I mean, like it's worth because
Yeah.
sometimes you want to
51%, yes.
Yeah.
But it has to matter because when I go to an accountant, I can't just this amount and we'll just make this
No.
worth. It all has to matter.
Right.
What is 1 point worth? When you have a when you have a $400,000 movie, and half of the equity is given to 100% of the financial interest in that, right?
Right.
You break it up into points, and you say, okay, if 51% is off the table, or let's just say 50 for a second, that means that every 1 point is equal to $8,000.
Okay.
Okay,
I see what you did.
that's how you figure that out, right?
Yeah.
It's just simple
Yeah.
math, right? And so I had to think to myself, okay, to give away 1 point is worth $8,000.
Right.
So when you're bargaining, you need to know that.
So in some ways, you're in your head when someone's like, "I'll volunteer for 2 weeks,"
Yeah.
and you're like, "Okay, 2 weeks. That's what."
Well, depends on you're right. You have to think like what's the day rate,
$5,000.
and I mean, here's the thing too. Like, I mean, you're asking me at the end here, and you're continuing to have to barter when you had hoped that you'd get to this point and you wouldn't have to keep and keep and keep,
Right.
and you play it as much as you can. And here I am still trying to work as hard as possible to just get this thing out, right? And finally, dear Lord. So how much is left? It's gone. All of it.
For sure.
Everything has been assigned at this point.
Right, yeah.
Everything has been assigned at this point. I have no more bargaining power, but I believe that we made it to here. I just gave away my last 2 points to some very dear people who gave a lot. And honestly, this is the heartbreaking part because that's all I had left.
Right.
And I have no more. And so you're like, okay, are you worth more? So you have to find ways to make up that difference if you can. But all said, I had to account for, how much am I going to need more money from different people? I got to save enough for that, and I got to save enough for people to just sweat equity people.
Yeah.
So it has to matter to an accountant. So when someone has 1% and they know that my budget was supposed to be $400,000, they're saying this is a $400,000 property, and 1% is equal to X because when they do profit and loss at the end of the year, they have to know what a person's 1% is worth when they are doing their losses and they're doling that out.
Sometimes taking a loss is strategic.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Like, you might have another project that's making you a lot of money, and then if you take a loss on another one, you don't get
that's
tax.
See, now you're talking about studios. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah, the what is it, the 5-picture system they do? They got the 2 they bet on, the one that's a wild card, and the other ones are deliberate tanks or something like that, right?
Yeah, because you need to offset your gains.
This is good because there are many people out there that probably want to cover documentaries and do this, and they think documentaries are way easier than making movies, and boy, is that not really true.
It's different muscles, same. I mean, you're going to be judged by the same criteria out there. So, are you good or you're not good? Like at the end of the day, $100 million movie is the litmus test for a $5,000 movie, right? It's the same judgment out there, the same people out there.
Right.
So unfortunately, you don't have the money to even rival some of this stuff with the star power, whatever. But you have to be as good in your own thing, which is like and then you put a money value to that. But
would you say that in some ways, because of how you're positioned, like the way you had to navigate this financial and budget hurdle over 7 years, that was your advantage?
So that is the advantage. I mean, the advantage is if I'm willing to risk my own time and a little bit of money, I can pick up a camera and go. And so you don't have to want for starting a story.
Like if you had $400,000, let's say some phantom funder at the very beginning gave you $400,000.
Okay.
You probably wouldn't have the same product because you would have come out the gate with a full budget. Mm-mm. Yeah.
I don't think so. Need is the mother of invention.
Right.
All these things are true. The cliches are true because you have to rise. You have to solve problems. You're always, and listen, I listen to a lot of filmmakers podcasts and stuff, and they'll talk about their $50 million movie, their $100 million movie. There's still actually needs. They have to figure out how to get creative with that stuff. Mm-hmm. When you have the kinds of stars and the kinds of special effects, you're still dealing with a budget. And so I think no matter what you're doing, you should never be in excess. Because if you don't have to work creatively to solve a problem, you're going to, I think, lose out on a lot of magic that would have happened. And so I always would rather operate with a team of ninjas, I say, than I would, an inflated crew. Because there's something about you all need each other, you're jumping around, it's more exciting, the day goes faster. Mm-hmm. You don't have just a lot of, I'm so tired. That's just a way more effective way to make a film, I think.
Yeah, you don't have excess personnel that don't really want to be there.
Right.
They're marking their time.
That's right.
The people that you're probably cultivating on your team are, like you say, they're ninjas. They're committed.
Yeah, you want to know they're talented, but they feel needed too, right? They feel needed, and so but there's also like the other side of that is, oh shit, you've asked for too much on those days. So it's always a risk, man. It's risk reward, and if you've taken too much that day, you really better try to earn it back by loving on those people and treating them right, and when the time comes, you give them stuff.
So what would you say is an indicator of consuming someone's goodwill? Like, because again, like you can look at a ledger and go, this person's not getting paid enough, right? And you can see the day rates and you can sort of compete with what person's participation, right? But someone's goodwill, again, is hard to read while you're doing all the other things you do as a filmmaker. So like, when do you know you're about to break someone who's probably a good person and you just didn't see it coming?
If I didn't see it coming, and which does happen, so I'm not saying that I'm like, I can see all the things, but I think it's your job as a producer or director is to be around and check in regularly.
So you're like HR as well.
You have to be.
Right, yeah.
You are. I mean, honestly, the directing part, like all the stuff it takes to get to that point, finally to be able to like create a space between the actors or whatever, like that is that much of the job, man.
Right.
You are being a counselor, you're being HR, you're being so many other things just to get to that point. But if you aren't doing those other jobs, you're gonna have a harder time getting what you need here, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I try my best to not know that I've used too much, just by checking in.
Yeah.
But it does surprise you, and if it does, you apologize. You
Yeah.
apologize. If you can, you try to set expectations in the beginning. If you exceed the time allotment or whatever you said you were going to do, you say, can I ask you to go further with me? And if they say no, you have to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, we have to solve this another way, or we have to come back another day, or whatever. Because there are people that will just flat up say, stop.
Right.
I experienced this in my first film, where I paid everyone pretty well. We had a pretty good budget, and but there were some long days due to weather conditions.
Right.
Slowed things down.
And then it increases your ask, right?
Yes. And this was the last day of shooting, the last day. And I had to have some late nights, and this was SAG, so like we had real rules and we had kids, which meant we had certain hours, but like we had to deal with a lot of boundaries that weren't as easy to overcome as like doing this documentary.
Right, yeah, because you can always ask more of yourself.
Yes. So in that situation, I learned this the hard way. I had spent and asked for too much capital along the way. We had a lot of overages along the way, and we had to pay for those. But I also, beyond paying for them, which had to figure that part out, I was also withdrawing from their emotional and physical.
And they
so
usually
even though they
usually tell you when it's way too late.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, but I'm down, and then grumble, and then like, I'm done, and then you're like, wait.
Yeah. So let me tell you what happened. This is a lesson learned, man. I had to go over on a couple of nights, and first night, no problem. Second night, yeah, okay, cool, we're good, we're with you, man. Third night, they were there, and it was my last day of filming, the very last day of filming, and I had this idea of how I wanted the movie to end. There was a shot that I absolutely wanted, and because it was snowing.
Yeah.
And it caused everyone to be freezing with it. I had to go to the truck and bring it down. So everyone was moving slower. And I could, at that point we were a machine, so I knew what things would take to set up. I had like the calculation going. I did not put the snow into my calculation, and it slowed everything down a lot. And the physical reality of them being cold. So I got to the end, and it was my last fucking shot of the movie that I'd spent years fundraising for and all this. I get to that last shot, and my AD says no. Said no. And I had crew coming to me and say, Justin, I'll do it. And he says, no, I am not letting you do this to the crew. And I'm going, hold on, we've come this far. This is the last day. This is my last shot. We talked about this shot earlier. You know that I can do anything about the snow.
Oh, man.
And he said, no. And in that moment, let me tell you what it was. What it was for me was I had to know there was nothing I could do about it. My heart was breaking, and I still had to get through because we were still in the scene we were in, and all we had to do was that. And I had to like come back and go, finish this scene well, knowing that all these eyes were on me. And at this point, a mutiny was beginning to start.
Yeah.
And then I had to like, okay, now it's like, shit, I need these people to finish this part, right? And like me at the end of this thing. So then I went, I have to, so in that moment, I said, all right, I've got to give a speech. And so I stood up on a chair and I said, all I could do is just appeal. I'm so grateful. I love you all. Thank you for so much. You know what? We have a way to finish this film. That was just kind of a thing, but I'm willing to let that go and it took me a long time to get there. I had to go away for a second. Because I was not expecting that response.
Because you're in a different headspace.
Oh,
By the time the problem gets to you, you're like, what?
Yeah. And we had, there was a bigger crew, so there was a lot of people, and so that's a whole different thing you have to wrangle when you've got a lot of people. And when it starts a mutiny,
there's
it starts
crews within crews.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I knew the only way to salvage finishing the scene that I was on, which was going to be my last scene. I didn't think it was, but I thought, was I had to like get the morale back just to complete that moment because I had lost it for what was left, and I had to just soul-crushingly let that shot go and trust that I was going to solve the finish another way, and that's what happened. And I've had that person come back to me after the film came out and apologize.
Oh man.
And you know, I had to let it go and say, you know, I get it, because they were mentally done. And so there was no rationale that would have served. And to be honest, he was done.
Right.
And on behalf of his crew, his doneness affected everybody else's decision.
Right.
And that was his job.
Right.
Was saying, I'm done. My crew must be done, and I'm not willing for you to make your crew feel like I feel, even though they might not. So I'm saying, on behalf of all things, we are done. And I went, are you speaking for everyone? Because most people said, no, dude, let's do this thing. And he's like, no.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the most courageous thing, right? Like, is it the person that tells you what they're thinking, or the person that goes, you know what, I'm willing to just give a little bit? Well, that's a tough one, because...
So,
you know,
so here's the lesson.
Right.
Here's the lesson. You asked me, when do you know you're taking too much? You have to admit when you've failed,
right,
because we're going to fail.
Right.
And you have to talk to people, and you have to try your best to be managing and seeing what's happening in the moment,
right,
as it's breaking down or okay.
Right.
And you're still just guessing. But there is no replacement for what you did 2 days before, and 5 days before, and 2 weeks before. If you are honoring these people along the way, and thanking them, you and me, I had to finish the movie. Like, the thing is, I'm screwing them if I don't complete my job,
right?
And I can't effing lose it.
Right.
So, integrity and kindness, human decency, are the currency you are trading in to finish your damn movie.
Aside from the paycheck.
Yeah. Because I'm telling you, man, it doesn't matter how much you are paying them.
Yeah.
Golden hour, time and a half, double time, whatever it is. When people are done, they are done. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that he was the gatekeeper for everyone else.
Right.
And he was done. And I wasn't getting past that gate.
Yeah.
And I had to accept that even though it might only be him, I had to respect his role to these people, because he was going to go on another film with them, and they needed to know that he had their backs, and I realized how important it was for their future. And dude, I bawled. I cried a lot of tears in the corner for one shot.
Yeah,
for one shot, but that was a tough one, man. And I've tried to never get to that point again with people ever.
So tough.
Ever. So I don't even know if I answered your question.
No,
but
because
that came up.
Because you know, financing and budget. There's the nerdy side, which is the numbers and the hours, right? Yeah. And then there's the spiritual side, which is like, I think everyone sets out in this industry, continues to do this industry, is because they like making art with other people, and there's a community, but the community can be toxic. Yeah. You know, it could be totally, like, you could be on a dysfunctional, you're like, oh, this is like a dysfunctional family. This is the set I'm on. We've all been there where you're like, I just have to get through this. But sometimes, you know, I haven't had to go through it myself, but I've seen other people go through it where they're like, I can't. Yeah. And I'm like, that's right. You know, and I've also been the person like, yeah, you can. Like, you know, and you're like,
how do you know?
How do you know? Like, am I being sincere, insincere? Everyone's got their own boundaries, their own standards, and in some ways, good on that guy for saying what he thought. But it's also really tough to take that hit.
Okay. Now throw this at you.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
When you know, and this comes with actors.
For sure.
When you know they actually do have more in them.
For sure.
And you do not want to manipulate. Mm-hmm. You do not want to take advantage. But when you know that what is stopping them is some kind of a fear or something like that. Yeah. You only know that from getting to understand them a little bit, right? So you spend the time with them. Then you're doing a whole different thing. Then it's like, okay, let's just stop for a second.
You don't want to be like Hitchcock, where you're doing
nasty. No, you're doing it just to
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. That's not good.
That's a different system.
That's a whole different.
Exist anymore. Hopefully.
Yeah, thank goodness. But when you know, and it's like, how do I convince the person who is blocked right now that they themselves actually have something more in them? But they can't see it. That's tough. That's a tough one too. And you have to respect their no. But you
Yeah.
So you try to create a space separate from everybody and get back to that whole like secret, intimate space that you were from the beginning that made them say yes to this project from the beginning, that what they want to be in their life, and you say, okay, listen, this is one of your moments. This is one of your moments.
I actually
I
had
need
a
you to
director do
tell
that
me.
for me, where I was like, I was just blowing the scene and it was not working. And he said the right things. And then for whatever reason, the copy came all back to me and it was working.
Huh.
And I was ready to quit. And it was because of time. It was because of how quick we were assembling the shots.
Yeah.
Because it's, sometimes you think about scenes, you need prep and
Oh,
you
yeah.
need to ramp up.
That's right,
But
yeah,
like
you
this
need
was
to
like,
get into
it's
the
all ready to
space.
go and act. I was like, what? Like it was too fast for me, and the copy vanished, and all these people were looking at me because it was a crowd scene.
Yeah.
And I was choking. It was really bad.
Yeah.
And then he said the right things,
Yeah.
and I got it, and it worked.
Yeah.
And I was like, if he hadn't tried to push me a little bit harder, we wouldn't have got it. But I mean, it's tough. Like, how do you know?
How do you know?
Yeah.
Man? How do you know? I don't know, man. And there's a whole component that is gut and understanding. I think that you have to know people, man. You have to take the intimacy and risk getting to know people, and listening. You have to listen.
Well,
it's over time.
It comes back to you being in a band.
Yeah.
Live performance.
I guess so.
interacting
You're
with people,
right.
There's
I guess you're right. Like
EQ, whatever.
Man, oh man. My goodness, there we go again. You're right, because that is, you're feeling, you're intuiting with these other guys. Look at that.
Cheers
Cheers,
on that.
man.
Bands.
You're intuiting with these people. All right, this is where I'm going to do this thing, and it's the drummer, no, I'm going to do the thing, or whatever I'm going to change things up a little bit. Are you in sync enough that just to look tells you everything that you need to that person? Have you communicated all the things?
Yeah, you're like on your set, and then you just like look at them, and they go right.
Yeah,
And then
you're like,
they
oh,
just-
we're gonna
they just
extend this.
go.
We're gonna extend this ending.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something different. Time and listening.
Hours.
Yeah, hours logged. Man.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So I don't know if there's an answer. What is the answer?
All right, all right. So I have an analogy for this one. This is
Okay.
an analogous question because, the difference between camels and horses.
Okay, yeah.
Camels tell you when they're getting to the end. They
Yeah.
slowly get worse,
Got it.
and the humps start to sag, right?
Yeah.
A horse will run through the desert and die of a heart attack.
Right.
It won't tell you what's going on.
Okay.
It's gonna be like, I'm good, bang, and dead. Now you're in the desert with no horse, right?
Yep. Right.
So, in this case,
Okay.
I think there's people that are camels and there are people that are horses.
So,
and
yeah.
the camel's gonna tell you, I'm getting tired. The horse is gonna be, I'm fine, and then all of a sudden they're done. No warning.
Let me throw one more thing.
Yeah.
Then there are humans, and horses may be like this. Annie can speak to this. We have past experiences that affect our current experiences.
Right.
On that particular situation, on that particular movie,
Right.
the movie this AD had been on before, they did not make it to the end. He, for whatever reason, it got out of control for him, and he did not finish the project. And they had to stop production, and I think they were going to go have to raise some more money just to finish it. And he took that very personally because he didn't allow for different things. And so
This was prior or post your report?
before my movie.
So
the
before you-
movie
okay.
before my movie.
So
he did that
before
one,
you-
and then he came to mine.
So he took a hit before your production.
And it was on him that it didn't complete.
Oh,
And it
dang.
was because, and he would say, because he said that the director kept taking more each day, and he was being nice. And so he would give a little, and he could see that it was getting derailed. And then, we'd have to add this extra night and what we didn't get onto the next day and whatever. And it snowballed to the point where it got so bad that the whole thing got derailed, and it got derailed way before the end shot. And so he was always
So you mean-
constantly, fearfully fighting what he had just experienced and going, oh my gosh, the director just asked for a little bit more time. And what's that going to cost me tomorrow? What's going to cost me the next day?
So he had a fear of overcommittal.
He had overcommittal.
Got
and
it.
so he and on those days so everyone else was cool.
Right.
On the days the first day I asked for extra time, he let me know right away. Like he was like really more intense about it than I thought he should have been.
Right.
Because there was a mechanism for that. I'm paying these people extra. Let's have a little bit more time. Let's start a little later. All the things that are built into the contracts.
Right.
But because of the fear, he brought more intensity to that moment. And that's when things began to get more intense with him, where we were no longer on the same team going the same direction. It was like, oh, you're going to make me lose another production. Because you asked something that happens normally, but now I know I fucked something up before.
Right.
And I'm that guy. So he finally wanted to show he had the authority that he had never asserted before in the last production that would have saved the movie, but he decided to do it at the very end.
So he
very,
was
very.
So he was a horse and then he was a camel.
Yeah.
Basically, he was already telling you like, oh, we're gonna cross the desert now.
Yeah.
This is gonna be bad.
You're right.
Yeah.
But
again,
he chose his moment.
He still maximized the impact of that last.
Yeah. He chose the moment at the end, and I think it was because he wanted to assert himself in a way that he felt like I did the thing. I did the thing that I didn't do before, and I'm doing it to you now, director, because I have that power, but I need to do it on behalf of myself and on behalf of my crew. So when I look back at that, as frustrated as I am, he went on to work with those guys. And you know what? That's probably what he needed. And the thing, he knew I was prepared, man, but he just couldn't get past the fact that another director had in his mind fucked him, and he was too nice. He was too nice, and I'm willing to have learned for him to have learned that. You know, I'm okay to let go what I need to let go for his whatever. But man, dude, it was tough. It was tough
In the moment.
It was really tough in the moment. Yeah. Anyway, so there we go. Did we?
I think we got that.
Yeah.
But, I guess because of the nature of this particular project and the long time period of production.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the way to look at it is there's no real pre-production phase. It's organically developing with production.
Yeah.
You close your day, you'll media manage, export all your stuff, and then go, what check boxes have I fulfilled, and then what are new check boxes?
When I am, because the studio Judson Studios was about a mile away from where I lived. I lived next door. By the way, didn't we talk about that? Did I say that? Like,
yeah, you said you were next door, but
I moved next door to Tim Carey.
But there were three locations, right?
So Judson was a mile and a half away from where we lived. So it was really easy to get down there anytime and stay late and come back late because you didn't have to get in car and drive hardly at all. I used to ride my bike down there. You know,
you could just collapse at the end of the day.
Yeah. So the pre-production work, you could get away with being a little bit more loosey-goosey, you know, because you're right there. Even though I had to think about the day and I had to plan for it the night before and all that stuff. It's when we would go to Kansas City. We'd go to Bullseye in Portland, where you have to be, because you only have, I'm going to be there for 7 days, and I have to make my days, and I have to get these interviews and these things, and make sure that he's available and they're available, and they get their job done and working. So the pre-production part of those days were way more complicated, and the only way to do that when it's just you and like one other person or two other people, but it's really you because I'm producing. Basically, I was producing myself. Right. I had no one else working with me. I had an ADs or any of that stuff. While I was media managing, I'd finish that. I'd have to either get up earlier in the day, really early,
or stay up super late.
Yeah. And I would change based on how crazy the day was. Right. Like at the end of the day, when I got the media downloaded and backed up, did I have enough in the can to even think about it? Or I'm like, no, it'll be better for me. And those days in Kansas City, the installers, because of how much work they had to do, they were long days. We were up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, because you had to do all the things you do, but you also had to work the same hours the installers were working.
Right.
So, all right, so the question here is then, the installers are pulling long days because they got to get, 3 tons of glass.
Yeah.
Into the thing. So they're pulling 12-hour days, right?
Yeah.
You're documenting that, which means you're bringing in that footage from multiple cameras, multiple microphones, and that means what, 4 to 6 hours of media management without even scrubbing it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
So that's you and maybe one other person, depending on what's going on.
Yep.
So what is it? 18 hours.
Easy.
18 hours, and you do that 4 days in a row?
Oh no! When we were there, we did it 6 days. So because they only
Six 18-hour days.
So they were there. There was a amount of money paid for these guys to go and do their job in a certain amount of days because Tim, they would send the installers there. Tim would come. I'm coming on day 7.
Right.
And it needs to be done so that I can look at my work because we've only got this many plane tickets and this much time
Right.
and this much budgeted. So the installers didn't have the luxury of like, oh, make it up tomorrow, whatever.
No. They got fixed hours.
Actually, we worked every day except for Sunday. If we would be there for a week, we wouldn't work Sunday. So we'd work 6 days. So Sunday, we actually were grateful for the fact that we'd be a little longer because then we knew we got at least one Sunday.
Right.
Because church is happening, right? So,
right. Yeah.
Even though we're not in there, it's disrupting, other things are going on.
At least you can get to scrub it.
Yeah.
Take a look at what you have.
And that didn't happen very often. A lot of times we were there for like 6 days and we worked every single day. We got there, we had the night we got there, we all went and had a drink and had some food. And that's the thing too, is those guys are there finishing their day. They want to go to the pub. They want to go and like, all right, we had our day, we worked hard. Well, I want to talk to them at the pub,
man.
I will tell you again. Someone told me this a long time ago. Choose your projects as wisely as you can. And this is for narratives. Someone said, if you're not willing to spend 7 years of your life on the project, even though the production might only be 4 weeks,
right,
and the edit might only take 9 months, they said that the business part of it, the back side of it, the film festival side of it, all the marketing side of it, if you're not willing to spend 7 years on this thing,
right,
this idea, this film idea, you might second guess doing it because it's going to require that of you. If it doesn't, you're lucky. So the willingness to do all the things and to stay up all the hours, I don't know where that energy came from. I was being drawn by the energy of the future of the thing that wanted to live that somehow meant so much to you.
Right.
And that's when when you're sitting down, the first moment interviewing and during the promo,
right,
and you knew that your life was going to change because it had that much energy contained in it. And you went, yeah, this is what you give your life to.
Right.
When it captures you like that. And that is how a thing gets done. If it's not feeding you and you are having to feed it,
you couldn't do this for someone else.
There's no effing way.
Right.
There's no effing way. Yeah, I couldn't. And so that's the other lesson, man, is that you're not just signing up for a movie. You're signing up for a business. You are launching another business. Your film is an entity that is a business.
Right.
And it will live for many, many decades. And you'll have to manage it for many decades. So, yeah.
So, obviously it's a passion project that you were able to do ridiculous hours on.
Yeah.
When you were getting the subject and all the materials assembled, did you have festivals in your bullseye? Were you targeting your end game towards festival? Like, if you're like, I'm going to Slam Dance or Sundance, this is the way I want to cut it. This is the flavor of this year. Because
interesting.
Are you attending festivals before you get like?
Interesting.
Obviously, you're doing this thing. It takes years.
Yeah.
But are you scoping out the competition? Are you targeting distributors while you're assembling things?
So if you sat down with film guru guys, they would probably tell you all those questions you just asked are good things to think about beforehand.
Right.
I'm going off of instinct, and I think that there's a point where you can't know all the things. There is an infinite amount of things to know.
Sure.
But I'd done this with multiple other projects before.
Yeah.
Several short films through the festival circuit. So even though it was a smaller timeline and budget, I still had the whole ride with the thing. So I understood. I had made friends in festivals from a long time ago. I knew ones that already kind of resonated with my work.
So did you do stuff like you've assembled the first act, and then you send that off to somebody?
No.
You were just
no. Because you never get a second chance to make a first impression. I've talked to enough people in enough time, and me personally learned that yeah, I can send a half-baked cut. I don't. That's not.
But that
how
might
I
turn them off.
Yeah, it might turn them off, and then at
Right.
the end, I might turn the corner, and then they're already turned off. Like I want to make sure that I'm delivering my best.
So you were precious.
So I'm gonna, yeah. Well, but here's the lesson learned again from the damn band, man. We spent forever. We want to make an album. We want to make an album. We want to make an album. And this record company came to us and said, "Put together an album, and we're gonna look at it." And it was a cool company. I don't know if
Right.
you ever heard of company record or Interscope Records at the
Yeah.
time, but
Yeah.
they're no longer. But at the time, I don't think they're still. Are they still around?
I don't think so.
But they were
a
like
lot,
a
a lot
big
of the
deal.
record companies.
They're a big deal. And so our manager like got someone at Interscope and they said, "Look, we like your tapes, but we want to hear something real, like real. So you go into the studio and really do something." And so we stopped everything. We stopped gigging
Right.
and we went into the studio. We spent money. We raised money. We spent a lot of money to make the thing.
The studio time at that time is pretty expensive.
Yeah. Because we're doing it on reel, by the way.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
filming the tape.
Reel to reel?
Or, sorry, filming the tape, recording the tape.
It's like the pancakes or whatever, the big tape.
Yeah, oh yeah, those big old dudes. So we spent the time and the energy. We got to the thing, and we were like, all right, now we have to have our CD release party. We'd done the press, we got the master, we got so much. And we sent the thing in to get mastered, and they say it always takes, a week to 10 days to master it. So we gave ourselves 2 weeks. We're like, surely we will have it back. Maybe it was a little bit longer, but we gave ourselves like a cushion of a week.
Right.
And we set our date for our CD release party.
Oh no.
But we were like, we gave ourselves plenty of cushion. They always say it's probably going to be this, but here's what here's conservative estimate. We gave ourselves way more time than that. We put so much time and effort and energy and got media press to come out and had the opening act and do this thing to the space we were playing in and put so much money and energy into the thing.
Oh,
and it
no.
was so effing cool. And the fucking CDs did not arrive.
Oh my god.
So we had a CD release party. More people that had ever been at that club ever. More people that had ever showed up for any of our gigs ever.
Oh man.
It was the most beautiful, amazing experience, and the show was great. And we had no CDs. And they didn't get there. Something happened, and they didn't get there for 2 weeks after.
Oh my god.
Now, not only if it would have been the next day, like maybe we could have like got the energy going, and people would have contacted us. But now it's totally subsided. Now we're trying to drum up the energy again. That taught me everything.
Right.
And so from that point on, and maybe it's a knee-jerk reaction, like the guy who the movie and the AD guy shut me off. But I went, I don't ever again want to commit to a deadline before that kind of a thing.
Right.
Until I have the thing in my hot little hands.
Right.
So
like
I didn't submit. I am not a
Yeah.
fan of submitting pre-cuts to festivals.
looking for feedback.
I
on the
don't.
project.
I'm like, when I finish the movie, I will then decide what's the festival I'm going to shoot for. And luckily, there are enough great festivals out there that you can say, all right, we're going to go for a South by Southwest, or depending on where it was.
Right.
So when we were done, I went, I think we're going to make Slam Dance. Meaning we're not going to get in,
Right.
but we'll make the deadline.
Right.
And so they were the first festival we submitted to, because I'm like, we're not getting into Sundance. There's no way. You have to submit to Sundance.
Yeah.
But I did it just like, but I'm like, but I didn't think we'd get into Slam
Right,
Dance, right?
right.
And so, but the film was done. It was ready, and I submitted it, and I started submitting to other things, and forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then we got the call, and I was at Shake Shack with my kids, and I got the call, and they were talking, and I'm driving, and I'm like, oh shit! I had to pull over, into the parking lot. I couldn't believe it was happening. I was so flippin' blown away in that moment, and that was just that thing where you're like, oh my gosh, someone liked it. This thing is not like only for me. I couldn't believe it. I believed in it. I thought it was more than me, but I didn't know until that moment.
Yeah. That's so rad.
Yeah, it was a thing.
I'm good on you for protecting it, because like that's
Well,
a tough one, because that's a long time.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
to just be like, no, I got it,
Yeah.
I'm hanging on to it. Like, I know for me, I would have at least had a few people in the editing bay.
Oh,
be like,
okay.
am I crazy?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
This is what we did first too.
Right.
We edited the thing. We had the
Right.
cut. We got it down to where we thought. We did test screenings for people.
Got
We'd
it.
get groups of people. We'd get feedback. We would do things. So we did all of that before.
Right.
So I felt like when we submitted, it wasn't just like, this is just for us. Like we knew better what we had than just me.
Right.
So I felt like, okay, from feedback and myself, this feels like the right edit to send.
So talking about, you just talked about how marketing blew up in your face as a band member.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do any marketing for this that helped you? It was Slam Dance, right?
Yeah.
So helped you fill seats at Slam Dance? Because I actually just went this last year to Sundance and Slam Dance just to check it out. And I was like, this is a cool vibe.
Yeah.
Just like, and there were some cool documentaries there, all kinds of stuff. So it was neat to check out. And I was like, I get it. I understand why this place is very unique. So when you were on the ground at Slam Dance, like how did you market to get?
Well, say the year back to yourself, the year that we were there. 2020.
Oh my God! Right? Yes. Oh
There
my
was
God!
no Slam Dance. There was no live anything. That served us because you have to go to the space and market like crazy, and you are in a sea of voices and going crazy and crazy and crazy. It was the first time they opened it up to online screening.
No.
So
way.
even though I think that the pandemic screwed us as far as distribution, it really served us in our first festival and first couple of festivals, because we got to market to everyone as opposed to just being a voice in the sea of voices there.
Oh no way!
Because there's a limited amount of people to come, and who's going to go to your film versus that
How
film.
do you draw? Yeah.
So we were able to market to our fans, the people that were in, and anyone could watch it online or on their TV.
That's wild.
And so they made a mechanism for people to sign on through their TVs.
So it kind of in a way made it equitable.
Yeah. So it was one of the silver linings of that for us, and somehow we got a lot of people to watch. When we got the numbers back, which was crazy. Out of all the films,
Sorry.
they go ahead. What's that?
I think I know why a lot of people watched it.
What's that?
Because they can't do anything else.
Right, exactly, right. But you're still vying for the
For
eyeballs,
attention, for sure.
Yeah, whoever.
But I mean, like,
But
there's nothing stopping them in terms of a show. What do you call it? A programming block. They don't have a competing
Right.
programming
No,
block
right.
that's keeping
Yep.
them from going.
Yep.
They could go bang, 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 bang through all of the content, right?
Yep. Okay.
So
here's an investment in people. We're back to that same thing.
right.
I didn't know this was coming. I had no idea
idea,
this was happening. But you know what? The investment in how you interacted with the people everywhere you
Right,
filmed,
yeah.
all the communities you filmed in, how you made them feel, how you respected
It's a
them.
long tail.
When I didn't know,
Yeah.
but by doing that, I could never have guessed that's the situation we've been in. But when the time came for me to say, guess what? It's out. And you can log on and you can go watch it. Now those people are saying, I enjoyed those folks who came.
Right.
I believe in what they
Right.
believed in.
Right.
Am I going to spend my time watching the thing, or do I think they were assholes?
Right.
No, I'm going to vote with my time.
Right.
And so we got back the numbers. How many people watched our film versus all the other films? I hope I'm not telling a fib. I know that we were twice as many as any other film that watched our movie. And I think it was the closest one to us, we were twice as many.
I think some of the viewership
Yeah.
during 21,
Yeah.
again, they're able to get around the box office threshold, right? They can stream everything.
Yeah.
They probably have nothing else to do because a lot of industries were still quite locked down at that time. You are covering a subject that has also some religious impact, and I have no doubt some of your viewership was recommended your documentary that they normally would not have made Slam Dance.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're
That was
like
the thing.
churchgoers
Yeah,
and-
that was
and
the thing I
whatnot.
was worried about. Now I'm trying to how to say this without being offensive. I don't find that many religious quote films are that great, and I don't think it's a secret. We all kind of know that. I think most of the time.
Anything that's got an agenda is hard,
Agenda, right? That's the
hard
thing.
to consume.
Anything that is proselytizing, anything that has an agenda, it just doesn't work.
What I
That's
liked
not.
ab-
That's
what I-
not. That's not. That's
All
not
right.
the way a movie works.
What I
okay?
liked
That's-
about your documentary was the subject was about the process of making a very difficult piece of art.
Yeah.
Right. And it never divorced itself of the iconography of like, you weren't saying anything about what it represents.
Yeah.
You were saying everything about how to make this thing.
Yeah.
And so that to me made it universal. Like that meant people who were religious could consume it, and it also meant people who were not religious to actually be open to what's happening with this artifact, right? So like, I appreciated the fact that it didn't cut anybody out.
Well, I figured that the intensity of the thing itself would create all the drama and the tension and the everything. I didn't need to sensationalize anything.
Right.
And so I let it be what it was. And I wanted to film people and interview people and represent them as they were. I wasn't there to like try to build a case. Build a case for like my feelings about religion or my feelings about how much money they spent on their church. It wasn't that's not what the movie was about.
Right.
I wanted to ask the questions so that people knew that I was aware of these things and let them decide how they felt about it. And I wanted to edit the people and show them as human people. I wasn't there to hopefully make anyone look better or worse than what they were.
Right. Because
none of us are. But I definitely didn't want to, as you said earlier, create drama like they do, in these, these competition shows or anything like that. I mean, no.
It's sort of,
so, but I felt like let the pastor, let the church going folks speak, and if they're nutty, that'll be them. They would take care of themselves, and in the end, they weren't nutty. They're actually pretty cool people.
Right.
I
mean, it's analogous to like if you could be the documentarian that covered the Sistine Chapel, you'd be like, wow, this is rad. This thing's, I don't care about anything. The thing is so good, like he's on a scaffold painting everything, that would be
that's
rad documentary, right?
That actually, I thought about that. Imagine if there would have been a document of that process. Because you just see the romantic thing, you go there and you just imagine, it's Michelangelo, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like sipping, on wine, and he's painting these amazing things, and it's
probably
all
being very
magic.
Sinful while he's doing
Sure.
But and they're like, oh, no one else in here.
But he was breaking his back on a scaffolding, laying upside down for hours upon hours upon days. He had to fight with people who were paying for the freaking paintings to get done.
We want people in here.
I mean, it actually was very much like a film.
Right. Yeah.
So there's no way I'm comparing the window to the Sistine Chapel, but honestly, there was a lot of the same themes going on during that time that was going on here.
For sure.
And I would have been so compelled to know those stories.
Right.
And so again, I just felt like that the content, the story, the characters were going to take care of the drama.
Right, I think, is we've talked about marketing and how the festival presented its own unique circumstances during a world-changing event, which everyone's talked about forever. But let's go into distribution. And like, obviously this wasn't a pre-sale project, right? Like you didn't have a pipeline to pre-sale it. This was something that was precious and dear to you. Mm-hmm. So in the post-sale market, after you've, had a pretty significant success rate on Slamdance's streaming, how did they close you? How did they, bring you into the fold? Like you're talking about Delta's distribution. I'm sure there's been other streaming services you've been on.
Yeah.
So what followed your success at the
I will tell you, and this is the thing that I am still, like, I feel like a child still in this part of it. I've learned enough lessons that I can take a movie from concept to finish to festivals to market. I feel like I can do all of that kind of Like I get it. I understand what I get. And I understand the business side. I understand the budgeting side. I understand the legal side. I've learned all those lessons. But the distribution side is a whole other thing, and it's completely out of your control. And what used to be the case a decade ago, 2 decades ago, is changing at a more and more and more rapid pace.
Right.
So what was happening a year ago, 2 years ago, is no longer happening. You cannot look and go, okay, here's a good guesstimation. It has changed so much.
Right.
It could not be a worse time for independent filmmakers to make a business out of this, because the platforms that you used to be able to rely upon, Netflix was kind of like the only one.
Right.
They were buying independent projects and saying, we don't have to do the work for this. This is done. We can offer them money, put Netflix on it,
Right.
see what it does for us. Well, now they're in competition with all the other platforms. So they can no longer just take things randomly. They have to create it internally.
Right.
Because they have to stand
They're
out.
their own studio.
They have to stand out among them. What is a Netflix original? What is an HBO original?
Right.
They have a competition they never had before.
Right.
So now they're going, all of our billions of dollars are going internal. We don't want to take a risk on something external, because every dollar we spend on that thing is not a dollar we're spending on this thing.
Exactly.
So we're competing against an impossible odds. So when you come to this film, despite all the success that we had in the festivals, all the awards, we took it out to all the platforms thinking that we had a great shot based on all this data, and we got fantastic responses. We got into what I thought was going to be a bidding war between two of the biggest ones the first time we went out. And I couldn't believe, I'm like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it just be? Everything is just gone and intuitively, and it's been amazing. Oh, this thing's going to be sold, and oh, it's going to happen. 2 weeks was going on, no, 2.5, 3 weeks was going on between these two companies, getting great feedback. They both called me the same day or like one day apart and said, we're passing.
Oh man.
And I couldn't even conceive of that being an option.
It's almost like the hope made it worse.
Oh, it was way worse.
Yeah.
I could, because so much positive feedback was coming. I couldn't even conceive of that.
Did they even go through a notes period? Like, did they say,
No.
hey, can you change the score?
No.
Nothing.
They came back after all of this really encouraging response and emails and said, we're passing.
What?
And I went, oh gosh, well, at least there's another one. And then they passed. And I went, oh my Lord. And the reason they gave, I'm like, I can do nothing about this. There was no notes. There was nothing.
Like, we
that
don't
could be
like
done.
glass.
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
But it was basically the characters, I don't know. I don't want to get political, but it was, I couldn't do anything about the people that happened to be there.
Yep.
And so it just was what it was. I tried really hard to make
Right.
sure that more of a broad range was represented, that more subjects were represented. But at the end of the day, it was a documentary. I didn't write this thing. These are the people. This is the subject matter.
Yeah.
And they passed saying, though we think this is a great film, we can't pick it up because you are not hitting these things,
metrics, yeah.
these metrics, and our spreadsheet says X. And so we don't, first of all, our diversity mandate says we've already taken too many, so you don't pass there. But then our metrics say, because of this word, stained glass, and this thing, it's religious. Unfortunately, as much as we like it, it doesn't add up in dollars and cents.
Awful.
So then we were like, no, this is not with those things. That we believe this is a universal story. We believe that a doctor going through med school will get this film just as much as anyone that.
This is the dark side of social mandates, because social mandates are good things, right?
Yeah.
I think they're good things. But
I do too,
when
yeah.
you take an MBA who doesn't do art, and they run through their checklist on what's
That's right.
going on, they're going to reject things of value without knowing they have value.
Right.
Because they may think that they're doing the right thing, which is fine, but it's the dark side of it, because it's obvious that they didn't see the universality of the content, irrespective of what was in the content.
Yeah,
You
they have committees and committees and committees
Yeah.
and shareholders, and people who are running
Yeah.
these studios and these platforms. They're business people now.
Mm-hmm.
They're marketers now. They're not lovers of content in the same way. That's why the record industry has gotten so crazy, right? It used to be lovers of albums, lovers of of music,
Right.
That were like, I'm in on you for 7 albums.
Well, it's like as contact increases, it becomes weird. Like TV killed the radio star, right?
That's
As soon
right.
as you can see the
That's right.
artist,
That's
they
right.
weren't bankable based on their looks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with,
we're
social media reach and content, now they're thinking in terms of political and market, and then diversity and equity. And like, I imagine those things are all difficult to navigate anyway.
Yeah.
But with Chuck Patton, we talked about McLuhan, and as people's contact increases, they actually become less tolerant.
That's right.
It's a weird inverse, you know. As soon as you have more access to somebody, more judgments fly.
Yeah.
Instead of less. And so you would think people would want to be more connected, more open. They're actually less connected, less open.
And
with
guess
more
what,
contact.
filmmakers, lovely, lovely filmmakers out there, I don't know what you do about that. So now you're in a game.
Yeah, different
And
game.
so what we did was we had to try to change the game.
Right.
So we have to prove that this is more universal than what is being said about it. So that's where we did our first fundraising, crowdfunding.
So this is crowdfunding for marketing?
Crowdfunding for distribution.
Got it.
So we were like, if we believed that if we put this thing in theaters, it will show that more people will come to this, regular folks will come to this and see it and love it. It was just a guess. It was just a hope. And so our agent, who'd picked us up recently, and I'll say Rocco Films, they are a sort of a pseudo agency / distributor. They kind of move in both of those spaces, but they're an all documentary company, and they were the first real champion that we had.
Nice.
They were like, we get this thing. And so they went to one of their relationships and talked to a company called Abramarama, which is a new theatrical distributor. And they're changing the game, how things work, because the game is changing in social media. And so they had found a formula that was really working for smaller films.
Right.
And they said, okay, this is what we think we can do. And they gave us a budget.
Right.
Because it's not we're picking you up. They were like, you're hiring us, but our relationship, they come from big relationships. Like they all worked at like really big companies. So they had all the knowledge, and they were saying, we can help you get out there. But we work for dollars and cents. We don't work for equity in the project. So we're not investing in it. You're paying us.
So like conversion or something like that.
Yeah, and so, but they were really cool because they believed in it, but they also, this is their business.
Right.
And so, but they have all the relationships to get it anywhere.
Right.
Everything you'd want. So they threw out their budget, and it was, we didn't have the money. So then we decided to launch a crowdfunding campaign through Indiegogo, and just to be able to put in theaters.
Right.
And try to prove that the platforms were wrong.
That's a huge.
So
what was your cost benefit analysis on that? Like when you said we're going to gamble this much if we can raise it, what is the like? Did you do a return sort of like? ROI
well, to me, but because it was crowdfunding, it was like I didn't know what it was like. Can we just? I don't know. At this
speculation.
point, it was speculation.
Got it.
Because we just wanted to get on a platform that we could get real notice and people and real money back. And so it was like, let's see if anyone else, all the friends we'd made along the way, would they be willing to buy a book from us? Would they be willing to buy a T-shirt from us? Anything.
Awesome. Yeah.
So we got all this sort of merch together and these ideas and these crazy situations where they get to talk to us online for an hour and do all these wonderful things, and decided on what a budget could be, which was not only paying Brahmarama to get it out, but to pay for publicists, to pay for social media marketing and all that, plus the ability to send us to the places. So travel budgets. So we put together a budget, we try to raise that amount, and we did not make it.
No.
We got a good ways. We actually, in the last hour, the last minute, we got to a big hurdle. We raised, unfortunately, less than what even a Brahmarama needed. Didn't include the travel. But people gave a lot of money. We were asking for a lot of money.
Yeah.
We were asking for like $130,000.
Yeah.
And we got to 80.
And that's not easy right now either.
No, it's not. So we got to 80.
Yeah.
And we went back to Abramarama and said, listen. And by the way, Indiegogo took a big chunk of that.
Right. They always
So
take a
you
commission.
raise 80, but you have to give away back.
Yeah.
So we had
And then there's tax
$65,000, half of what we needed for our budget. We went back to Abramarama and said, we didn't make it. Would you be willing to do everything you said you wanted to do for this amount of money? And we worked out a deal where they took a little bit more just from the theatrical part. And they did all the things. And they said, but we can only promise you about 7 to 10. We can only promise you 7 to 10 screenings. That's all we feel comfortable with. And we ended up doing 41 cities because we kept getting asked and asked and asked. And we've been asked and asked and asked. The person booking us has worked way beyond what they were budgeted because we kept getting requests. And then we took that data. We had so many sold out screenings. Really cool things happened.
Yeah.
We traveled with it. We filmed the whole thing. We took the data back saying, we got it, Netflix. We got it, HBO. Look. And they still said no. We proved it overwhelmingly. And they still said no because they said the same diversity mandate stuff and the same whatever stuff. So then it was like, all right, what do we do now? And Roku said, well, we've got to put this out on TVOD. And so we are on the platforms, which transactional video. But so you go to Apple, you go to Apple TV.
Right.
You put Holy Frit in there, you'll see it just like any other film. You can search for it, but you have to rent it.
Right.
So the way it works is like if you have Apple but you don't have Amazon, if you want to watch an Amazon movie, you end up renting that one because you don't have the platform.
Right.
You're not paying for the subscription.
Right.
Well, so that's what TVOD allows for. So we're all the places that you know and trust.
Right.
But people have to spend $3.99 for a rental, $4.99 for a rental, or $14.99.
Right.
So, but now we're back to the marketing.
Right.
So now myself.
Right.
Is basically how much money can I cough up per month to market for the TVOD, because now it's on me again to try to get people to come to the table and rent this thing. And will that number ever get to the point where I not only just make back my money, but people to make back a little bit of money? I don't know. Can it get to a tipping point? I don't know.
Because you gotta sweat some advertising revenue to get conversion.
That's right.
And that's always in flux anyway, because some months you're like, oh, I got my algorithms correct, and then next month you're like, damn it, I had an ad
Totally.
spend for
Yeah. So now we're back again to myself versus the thing.
whatever that is. Yeah.
And there's so many people that want this to do so good, and we made friends along the way, and those friends are stepping up, but we're left. Where this ends is ...
Oh, that's wild. ...
We don't know.
At some point, the world's a dynamic place. At some point, you're just going to be heavy enough to break right through it.
I appreciate that, man. I tell my wife that if you don't mind. When we get done here, you just call her up,
dude,
and say this is coming.
It's coming. So weird. It's so weird because it's almost like everyone's got to learn the same lessons again. A lot of the marketing reps have forgotten what it was like to make money in the 90s. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you don't need to make a good cheeseburger. You just need a cheeseburger that everyone likes. And you're just like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You need to make a cheeseburger that you would eat.
Yes.
And then that's the one you sell.
That's right.
And I'm all for making the world better, but like sometimes it's just a cheeseburger. Yeah. And that's okay.
That's right.
So like I look at your documentary and I go, I didn't think I would like a documentary on stained glass windows, but I sat and finished it. I got through it.
Hey man, I didn't either.
I learned some new stuff. I didn't know this was like a huge thing, like the textures of glass and then how heavy it was and how impossible the project was. I was like, this is ridiculous. So all I gotta say is I think you've got the momentum. It's gonna get through. Just keep going, man.
Thank you, man. I will toast you on that. And Casey, if you're listening, he said it. I didn't say it. So thank you, man. Thank you for spending the time with me, for watching the film. This means a lot, man. And for asking questions that I have never been asked before. Thank you.
People need to know.
Thank you, man. Cheers. Cheers.
Where can we rent your movie?
The film is currently on Apple TV Plus. It is on Amazon. It is on Google, Google Play. It's on YouTube, and it's on Vimeo. We are waiting to hear back from your home country, Canada. There's another platform that we're looking at there, and then very, very soon, by the time you see this, it will have been on Delta, which is cool.
Right on.
So, those places, run, don't walk. Thank you.